a werewolf shifter romance audiobook written by Mr. V. Prologue. The drums stopped at dawn. I was 7 years old the day the Crimson Vale Pack declared me cursed. 7 years old when I learned that being different meant being dangerous. That a child born under a blood moon could be loved one day and feared the next. I remember my mother's face as the council delivered their verdict. Elena Thorne, the pack's most respected healer, standing with her spine rigid and her eyes dry. She didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't argue when Alpha Ronan pronounced the sentence. "The child bears the mark," he'd said, his voice echoing through the ceremonial hall. Red eyes at birth, white hair before her first year, and now this. He gestured to the shattered windows behind him, to the dead birds that had fallen from the sky when I'd screamed during the claiming ceremony. The old texts are clear. A blood moon child brings ruin. She cannot remain. They'd given us 3 days. 3 days to gather what we could carry. 3 days for my mother to say goodbye to the only home she'd ever known. 3 days before we were escorted to the border of the Whispering Marsh and told never to return. If we survived until spring, Alpha Ronan had said, we could petition for rogue status. Live on the outskirts, take contracts, exist in the shadows. But we could never be Pack again. Never be protected. Never be home. My mother had taken my hand, her fingers trembling just slightly, and led me into the marsh, into the mist and mud and darkness where things that even wolves feared made their nests. "Listen to me, Sarah," she'd whispered that first night, as we huddled in a hollow tree and listened to something massive move through the water nearby. "You are not cursed. You are something the packs have forgotten how to understand. Something ancient. Something they fear because they've lost the knowledge of what you truly are." "What am I?" I'd asked, my voice small and terrified. She'd touched the white streak in my hair, her smile sad and knowing. "You're a seer, the firstborn in 3 generations. And when your power fully wakes," she'd stopped herself, her eyes distant. "When your power wakes, you'll understand everything." That was 6 months ago. Yesterday, my mother died. Not from the marsh. Not from rogues or starvation or any of the 100 dangers that stalked us daily. She died from a wound that should have healed. That would have healed if she'd still had pack bonds to draw strength from. An infection that ate through her slowly, painfully, while I watched helpless and screaming. Her last words were, "Find the silver wolf. He'll understand. He'll keep you safe when I can't." I didn't know what she meant. Didn't know what silver wolf, or where to find him, or how I was supposed to survive alone in a marsh that killed grown warriors. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Crimson Vale Pack had taken everything from me. My home, my mother, my future. This is the story of how a cursed child became something they never imagined. How I went from nothing to everything. How I learned that the power they feared was the power that would make them kneel. My name is Seraphina Thorne, and I am the wolf they should have killed when they had the chance. Chapter 1. Alone in the Marsh. The mist never lifted in the Whispering Marsh. I'd learned that in the 6 months before my mother died. That this place existed in permanent twilight, where the sun was just a pale suggestion beyond layers of fog, and the moon never showed its face clearly. Sound traveled strangely here, distorted, making it impossible to judge distance. What seemed close might be miles away. What seemed far might be right behind you. It was the perfect place to go mad. Or die. Usually both. I sat in our hollow tree, the one my mother and I had claimed and defended and made as safe as anything could be in this nightmare landscape. Her body was gone now. I'd burned it the way she'd asked, using the last of our dried wood and herbs to send her spirit properly to the moon goddess. If the moon goddess even listened to cursed children and cast out healers. 3 days had passed since the burning. 3 days of sitting in this tree, staring at nothing, trying to figure out what came next. My food was gone. My water was running low. And I could hear something circling our tree at night. Something big and patient that seemed to know I was alone now. Vulnerable, easy prey. I should move. Should pack what little I had and try to reach the marsh's edge. Try to find some pack that might take pity on a 7-year-old orphan. Instead, I pulled out the object my mother had given me on her deathbed. A compass, old and silver, with strange markings around its edge that weren't any language I recognized. The needle didn't point north. It spun slowly, constantly, like it was searching for something it couldn't quite find. "Follow it," my mother had gasped, pressing it into my palm. "When you're ready, when you have no other choice. Follow it, and it will lead you to him." The silver wolf. The one who'd understand. I turned the compass over in my hands, watching the needle spin. Did I have another choice? Could I survive here alone? A sound cut through my thoughts. A howl, close and hungry, with an edge of intelligence that made my blood run cold. The thing that had been circling wasn't being patient anymore. I scrambled up the tree trunk, my small hands finding holds my mother had carved months ago. Higher, higher, until I was in the thinner branches where nothing large could follow. Below, I heard it emerge from the mist. Not a wolf. Something else. Something with too many legs and eyes that glowed yellow in the darkness, and a smell like rotting meat and stagnant water. A marsh demon, my mother had called them. Remnants of old magic gone wrong, creatures that shouldn't exist but did anyway, feeding on anything stupid enough to wander their territory. It couldn't climb, but it could wait, and it knew I'd have to come down eventually. I looked at the compass again. The needle had stopped spinning. It pointed firmly east, away from the tree, deeper into the marsh. Deeper toward whatever was worse than where I already, or toward salvation. Toward the silver wolf. Toward whatever strange destiny my mother had believed waited for me. The demon below made a sound, half hiss, half growl, and began scraping at the tree trunk with claws that left deep gouges in the wood. Decision made. I started climbing laterally, moving from branch to branch, tree to tree where the canopy connected. The demon followed below, patient, methodical. But it couldn't track as well once I was moving, couldn't predict which direction I'd go. I followed the compass. For hours I climbed, my hands bleeding, my muscles screaming. The mist grew thicker. The trees grew stranger. Twisted, ancient, their bark covered in symbols that seemed to glow faintly in my peripheral vision. And then, impossibly, I smelled smoke. Not marsh rot. Not demon stench. Clean smoke, wood fire, something that meant people. Civilization. Maybe even safety. The compass needle pointed directly toward it. I climbed faster, hope and fear warring in my chest. What if it was rogues? What if they were worse than the demon? What if? I broke through a particularly thick layer of mist and saw it. A camp. Small, just 2 tents and a fire, but organized with military precision. And standing next to that fire, checking what looked like a map, was the most beautiful wolf I'd ever seen. He was tall, probably mid-20s, with silver-white hair that marked him as something rare. His eyes, even from this distance, seemed to glow amber in the firelight. He moved with the controlled grace of a trained warrior, and I could feel his power even from the trees. Alpha power, strong and steady. The silver wolf. It had to be. I started to climb down, my exhausted body moving on instinct. I was maybe 10 feet from the ground when the branch broke. I fell with a crash that scattered leaves and brought every wolf in that camp to instant alertness. 3 warriors I hadn't seen materialized from the shadows, weapons drawn. And the silver-haired man was suddenly right there, crouched in front of me where I'd landed in a graceless heap, his amber eyes sharp and assessing. "Well," he said, his voice deep and surprisingly gentle. "You're not what I expected to find in the Whispering Marsh." I tried to speak, tried to explain, tried to ask if he was the one my mother meant. But exhaustion and fear and grief crashed over me all at once. The last thing I saw before darkness took me was his face, concerned, curious, and marked with a thin silver scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. Then nothing. Chapter 2. The Silver Wolf. I woke to warmth. Not the damp, bone-chilling cold of the marsh, but real warmth. A fire crackling nearby, thick furs wrapped around me. The smell of something cooking that made my stomach clench with desperate hunger. For a disorienting moment, I thought I was back home in Crimson Vale, that the last 6 months had been a nightmare, that my mother would appear any second with her gentle smile and healing hands. Then I opened my eyes and saw the tent canvas above me, heard voices speaking in low tones outside, and remembered. The marsh, the demon, the fall, the silver-haired man. I sat up too quickly, and the world spun. A hand caught my shoulder, steadying me. "Easy," a female voice said. "You've been out for almost a full day. Your body needs time." I turned to find a woman sitting beside me, maybe 40, with kind brown eyes and the bearing of someone used to command. She wore leather armor marked with symbols I didn't recognize, and her scent carried the unmistakable mark of a beta wolf. "Who?" My voice came out as a croak. She held a water skin to my lips, and I drank gratefully. "I'm Mira," she said once I'd finished. "Second in command to Alpha Cashin of the Nightshade Guard." and you are either the bravest or most foolish child I've ever met, traveling alone through the Whispering Marsh. I didn't have a choice, I whispered. My mother died. There was a demon. I had to. I stopped, unsure how much to reveal. Myra's expression softened. We found the demon, or rather, what was left of it. Something tore it apart about half a mile from where you fell from that tree. She paused. Any idea what could do that? I shook my head mutely. Interesting. She studied me with those sharp eyes. The Alpha wants to speak with you. Are you strong enough to walk, or should I bring him here? The mention of the silver-haired man, Alpha Cashin, made my heart race for reasons I didn't understand. I can walk. Mira helped me to my feet and guided me outside. The camp was bigger than I'd thought. At least a dozen warriors, all wearing the same marked leather armor, all radiating the controlled power of trained fighters. They stopped what they were doing to watch me pass, their expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion. Alpha Cashin stood at the center of camp, speaking with two of his warriors. He looked up as we approached, and I felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. Up close, he was even more striking. The silver hair wasn't just unusual. It was luminous, catching light even in the marsh's perpetual twilight. His eyes were pure amber, almost gold, and that scar across his face only made him more compelling, like a statue of a warrior god someone had marked to prove he was real. He was maybe 25 years old, and already carried himself with the authority of someone who'd commanded warriors for decades. "Leave us," he said quietly to Mira. She bowed and retreated, though I noticed she didn't go far. Cashin crouched down, bringing himself to my eye level. "What's your name?" "Seraphina." "Sarah." He tested the name. "And your pack?" This was the moment of truth. I could lie, could make up some story about being separated from traveling parents, could hide what I was. But something in his eyes, something ancient and knowing, told me he'd see through any deception. "Crimson Vale," I said quietly. "Former Crimson Vale. They exiled us. My mother and me. 6 months ago." His expression didn't change, but I felt something shift in the air around him. "Elena Thorne was your mother." It wasn't a question. He knew. Somehow he knew. "How?" "I knew your mother," he said, his voice gentler now. "Not well, but I met her once years ago, at a gathering of healers. She was brilliant, kind, and she had a gift for seeing truth others missed." He paused. "I heard she'd been cast out, but not why. Not that she'd had a child with her. They called me cursed," I whispered. "Blood moon child. Red eyes at birth, white hair, and then things started happening around me. Bad things. Animals dying, glass breaking, storms when I cried. I looked down at my hands. They said I'd bring ruin to the pack. Look at me, Sarah." I forced myself to meet his gaze. "You're not cursed," he said with absolute certainty. "You're a seer. A rare gift. One that manifests in strange ways before it stabilizes. The old packs understood this. Modern packs." He shook his head. "Modern packs fear what they don't understand and call it cursed." My mother's words, almost exactly. She said the same thing, right before we were exiled. Your mother was right. He stood, towering over me again, but his presence felt protective rather than threatening. "The question now is what to do with you. You can't go back to Crimson Vale." "I'd never go back," I said fiercely. "They let her die." "They," my voice broke. He waited patiently while I collected myself. "You can't stay in the marsh," he continued. "Even if you survived the demons, you'd go feral within a year. A child needs pack bonds, needs connection, needs—" "I have nowhere to go," I interrupted. "No pack will take a cursed blood moon child. Even if I'm not actually cursed, the stigma." "The Nightshade Guard isn't a traditional pack," Cashin said. "We're a military unit, sworn to protect the neutral territories and hunt the things that threaten all packs. We answer to no Alpha Council, follow no traditional pack structure." He paused, watching me carefully. "And we judge wolves by their actions, not their birth omens." Hope flared in my chest, painful and desperate. "You'd take me?" "On a trial basis," he said. "You'd have to train, have to prove yourself useful, have to earn your place. And if your seer abilities manifest in dangerous ways, we'd need to find someone qualified to teach you control." He tilted his head. "But yes, if you want it, there's a place for you here." I should have been cautious. Should have asked more questions, demanded guarantees, been suspicious of this too convenient salvation. Instead, I felt something loosen in my chest, a knot of fear and grief I'd been carrying for 6 months, and whispered, "Yes. Please. Yes." Cashin's expression softened into something almost like a smile. "Then welcome to the Nightshade Guard, Sarah Thorne." He offered his hand, and when I took it, I felt a spark of something. Not quite a pack bond, but a connection nonetheless, like a promise settling into my bones. "Thank you," I breathed. "My mother, she told me to find the Silver Wolf. She said he'd understand, that he'd keep me safe. I think she meant you." Something flickered across his face, surprise, recognition, something deeper I couldn't read. "Your mother sent you to me specifically?" I pulled out the compass, showed him how the needle had pointed east, how it had led me directly to his camp. "She gave me this. Said to follow it when I had no other choice." He took the compass carefully, studied the markings, and his expression went very still. "Sarah, do you know what this is?" I shook my head. "It's a wayfinder. Ancient seer magic keyed to a specific person's energy signature." He looked at me with new intensity. "Your mother didn't just send you to find any silver wolf. She keyed this compass to find me specifically, which means she knew." He stopped himself. "Knew what?" "That's a conversation for another time," he said, handing the compass back. "For now, you need food, rest, and proper healing. Mira will get you settled." He turned to leave, then paused. "Sarah, your mother was right to send you to me. I promise I'll keep you safe." As he walked away, I noticed something that made my breath catch. Around his neck, hidden beneath his collar, was a pendant on a silver chain. I only caught a glimpse, but the symbol etched into it was identical to the markings on my compass. My mother hadn't just known about him. She'd known him well enough to key ancient seer magic to his energy, well enough to trust him with her daughter's life. Who was Alpha Cashin? And what had my mother not told me about the man she'd sent me to find? Chapter 3. Training and Truth. The Nightshade Guard didn't coddle children. I learned that within my first week. While the warriors treated me with rough kindness, making sure I ate, giving me a tent of my own, not actively trying to kill me, they also expected me to pull my weight. "You're 7 years old," Mira said on my 3rd day, handing me a wooden practice sword that was almost as tall as I was. "But you're wolf-born, which means you're stronger and faster than any human child your age. Time to prove it." The training was brutal. Every morning before dawn, I ran laps around the camp until my legs gave out. Then weapons practice, sword, knife, staff, learning forms that my small body could barely execute. Then lessons in tracking, in reading signs, in understanding the language of the forest. In the afternoons, I had camp duties. Hauling water, preparing food, maintaining weapons, doing all the tedious work that kept a military unit functioning. My hands developed calluses. My muscles, which had been thin and weak from months in the marsh, began to strengthen. But the hardest part wasn't the physical training. It was learning to exist around so many people again after months of isolation. The Nightshade Guard numbered 37 warriors. All of them experienced fighters from various packs who'd chosen to serve something larger than pack politics. They were loud, rough-mannered, and utterly devoted to each other in a way that made my chest ache with longing. They had what I'd lost, belonging. Cashin ran the guard with firm but fair authority. He trained alongside his warriors, never asking them to do anything he wouldn't do himself. He settled disputes with quick justice, rewarded excellence with genuine praise, and commanded absolute loyalty through respect rather than fear. I watched him obsessively, trying to understand the man my mother had trusted with my life. He was patient with me in a way that surprised everyone, including himself. When I struggled with a sword form, he'd demonstrate it slowly, adjusting my grip with careful hands. When I failed at a tracking exercise, he'd take me back through it step by step until I understood my mistake. "You have good instincts," he said one afternoon, 3 weeks after I'd arrived. We were sitting by the fire, and he was teaching me to read the stars for navigation. "Your mother trained you well before." He stopped. "Before we were exiled," I finished. "You can say it. I'm not going to break." He studied me with those amber eyes. "No, I don't think you will. You're stronger than you look, Sarah Thorne." "I had to be," I said quietly, "to survive the marsh." "About that." He shifted, his expression becoming more serious. "The demon that was hunting you. The one we found torn apart. Do you remember anything unusual happening that night? Any strange feelings, any loss of time?" I thought back, tried to remember through the haze of exhaustion and fear. There was a moment. When I was in the tree, and the demon was below, and I was so scared I couldn't breathe. And then suddenly I felt warm, like someone wrapped me in sunlight. And when I looked down, the demon was backing away, making this terrified sound. And after that, nothing. I started climbing, following the compass, and when I looked back later, the demon wasn't following anymore. I frowned. Did I kill it somehow? Not you directly, Cashin said carefully, but your seer power, manifesting unconsciously to protect you. You created what we call a fear aura. Made the demon experience its own worst nightmares until it went mad and attacked itself. He paused. It's an extremely rare seer ability, and dangerous if left uncontrolled. Cold dread settled in my stomach. So Crimson Vale was right. I am dangerous. No. His voice was sharp enough that I flinched. He gentled his tone. You have power that needs training, needs understanding. That's not the same as being dangerous. A sword is just metal until someone wields it. Your gifts are the same. Can you train me? I asked, hope and fear mixing together. Can you teach me control? I can teach you the basics, he said. But to truly master seer abilities, you'd need another seer. And there, he hesitated. Exceptionally rare. I've only met 3 in my lifetime, and one of them was your mother. Who were the others? Something crossed his face, old pain carefully hidden. The first was my grandmother. She died when I was 12. And the second, he stopped abruptly, his expression closing off. The second is complicated. I wanted to push, wanted to understand, but something in his tone told me this was a wall I wasn't ready to climb yet. For now, he continued, changing the subject with deliberate firmness, focus on your physical training. A strong body makes controlling mental gifts easier. Trust me on this. Over the following months, I did exactly that. I threw myself into training with desperate intensity, as if becoming strong enough, fast enough, skilled enough would somehow fill the hollow place my mother's death had left. I grew, not just in skill, but in size. Wolf children developed faster than humans. By my 8th birthday, I looked and moved like a human 10-year-old. My white hair grew long, and I learned to braid it back in the warrior style. My red eyes, which had marked me as cursed in Crimson Vale, were common enough among the diverse guard that no one commented. And I discovered something unexpected. I was good at this life. Good at tracking, at reading signs others missed. Good at predicting where prey would go, where enemies would strike. My seer gift, even untrained, gave me an edge that the warriors began to notice and respect. The pups got instincts like a damn oracle. I overheard one warrior tell another. Predicted that bear ambush 3 days before it happened. Seer blood, the other responded. Elena's daughter through and through. The comparison to my mother should have hurt, but instead it filled me with quiet pride. I was becoming something she'd have been proud of. But through it all, I remained aware of Cashin, of the way his amber eyes sometimes tracked me across the camp with an expression I couldn't quite read, of the pendant he wore that matched my compass's markings, of the careful distance he maintained, as if afraid to get too close. It was Mira who finally explained, 6 months after I'd joined the guard. We were on patrol together, just the 2 of us, when I asked her directly, "Why does Cashin look at me like that sometimes? Like he knows something he's not telling me?" Mira was quiet for a long moment, her eyes scanning the forest. Finally, she said, "Because he made a promise to your mother, and he's terrified of failing her." "What kind of promise?" "That's his story to tell, not mine." She glanced at me. "But I will say this, Alpha Cashin doesn't take on strays, doesn't adopt orphans, doesn't offer his protection lightly. The fact that he did for you, without hesitation, means your mother gave him a damn good reason. She keyed the Wayfinder to him," I said. "That means she knew him before. Maybe even trusted him with secrets." "Your mother was a very wise woman," Mira said carefully. "If she wanted you with Cashin specifically, I'd trust her judgment." We fell into silence, moving through the underbrush with the synchronized quiet of trained scouts. But my mind was racing. What promise had my mother extracted from Cashin? And why did it feel like my entire future was built on secrets I didn't understand? That night, I made a decision. I would prove myself to the Nightshade Guard, would become strong enough that they'd never question my place here. And eventually, when I was ready, I'd demand the truth from Cashin. All of it. Who he really was, what my mother had known, and why a Wayfinder keyed to his energy had been my mother's final gift. But first, I had to survive the next 3 years of training. Had to become a warrior worthy of the guard's respect. Had to become someone my mother would be. As I lay in my tent that night, exhausted and aching from another day of brutal training, I touched the compass around my neck. The needle had stopped spinning entirely now, pointing nowhere because I'd already found what it was meant to lead me to. Or had I? Something about Cashin still felt like a mystery waiting to unfold. Like the compass had brought me to him for reasons beyond simple protection. What did you know, Mama? I whispered to the darkness. What did you see that I can't? The tent offered no answers. But somewhere in the camp, I heard Cashin's voice giving orders for tomorrow's mission, strong and certain and steady. And I realized, with a clarity that felt almost like my seer gift activating, that understanding him was going to be the key to understanding everything, including what I was becoming. Chapter 4. The First Vision. It happened on a routine patrol when I was 8 years old. We were tracking a group of rogues who'd been attacking merchant caravans on the northern trade route. Standard guard work. The kind of mission I'd been on a dozen times before. I was positioned as rear scout, my job to watch our backs while the main unit moved ahead. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. Every instinct I developed over the past year screamed warning, but I couldn't pinpoint why. Then the world fractured. One moment I was walking through normal forest, autumn leaves crunching under my boots. The next I was somewhere else, still in the same physical location, but seeing it differently, like looking through water or colored glass. The trees were wrong. Twisted, burning, their branches reaching like claws. The sky was red, bruised with storm clouds that moved against the wind. And in the clearing ahead I saw Cashin, but not the Cashin I knew. This Cashin was older, his silver hair longer, his face marked with new scars. He was on his knees, surrounded by wolves I didn't recognize, and there was blood everywhere. So much blood. A woman stood before him, tall and beautiful and terrible, with eyes that glowed white like full moons. She wore a crown of bone and silver, and when she spoke, her voice echoed like it came from everywhere and nowhere. You thought you could hide her from me, the woman said. You thought your promises to a dead healer would be enough. But I always find what's mine. And the seer child, she smiled, and it was the cruelest expression I'd ever seen. She'll burn for what her bloodline took from me. Cashin looked up at her, defiant despite the blood running down his face. You'll have to go through me first. Oh, I intend to. She raised her hand and light, terrible, burning white light began to build in her palm. And I knew with the certainty of vision that if that light touched Cashin, he would die. Completely. Permanently. No wolf healing could save him. I tried to scream a warning, tried to run forward, tried to do anything. The vision shattered. I was back in the normal forest, gasping, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Sweat poured down my face despite the autumn cold. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip my weapon. Sarah. Myra's voice, urgent and concerned. She was suddenly beside me, her hand on my shoulder. What happened? Your eyes, they went completely white. Vision. I managed to choke out. Cashin. Danger. We need. An explosion of sound from ahead. Shouts, the clash of weapons. A howl of rage that could only be Cashin's wolf. The rogues had ambushed the main unit. Stay here, Mira commanded, already running toward the fight. That's an order, Sarah. But I couldn't stay, because the vision was still echoing in my head, and I knew with the bone-deep certainty of seer sight, that something worse than rogues was coming. Something connected to the woman with the bone crown. I ran after Mira, bursting into the clearing just in time to see the fight. Cashin had shifted to his wolf form, massive and silver white, larger than any normal alpha, moving with lethal grace as he tore through the rogues. His guard fought beside him, coordinated and efficient. It should have been over in minutes. Then I felt it. A wrongness in the air, like reality itself was tearing. The temperature dropped so fast my breath frosted. And a portal, there was no other word for it, opened at the edge of the clearing, a rip in space that bled darkness and cold. Something stepped through. Not the woman from my vision, but something just as terrible. A shadow creature, vaguely wolf-shaped but wrong, its edges flickering and indistinct like smoke. Its eyes were the same burning white as the woman's had been. It looked directly at me. Seer child, it said, and its voice was like wine through a graveyard. Come. Cashin's head snapped toward me, his amber wolf eyes going wide with recognition and horror. He abandoned his fight with the rogues, charging toward me and the shadow creature with desperate speed. But the creature was faster. It moved like liquid darkness, flowing across the ground, reaching for me with hands that weren't quite hands. I tried to run, tried to move, but fear had locked my muscles. This was what my mother had protected me from. This was what Cashin had promised to keep me safe from. This was what I was, ultimately, powerless against. The creature's hand touched my shoulder, and the world exploded with light. Not the terrible burning light from my vision, but something different. Warm light, golden and fierce, erupting from my skin like I'd swallowed the sun. The shadow creature shrieked, a sound that shattered trees and sent the remaining rogues fleeing in terror. It yanked its hand back, smoking and damaged, and for a moment I saw genuine fear in those white eyes. "Impossible," it hissed. "You're untrained. You shouldn't be able to. Leave." The word came from my mouth, but it wasn't entirely my voice. Something else spoke through me, something ancient and powerful that had been sleeping in my blood. "This child is claimed. Protected. You have no dominion here." The creature staggered back, and I saw it then, the threads of dark magic connecting it to somewhere else, someone else. The woman from my vision, watching through her servant's eyes. "The Oracle Queen sends her regards," the creature said, already retreating toward its portal. "She'll come for the child herself. And when she does, Cashin Silvermane, your pretty promises won't save either of you." It vanished through the portal, and the tear in reality sealed behind it with a sound like a thunderclap. I collapsed. Cashin caught me before I hit the ground, shifting back to human form with a speed that should have been impossible. His arms wrapped around me, and I could feel his heart pounding, could smell fear and fury and something else radiating off him in waves. "I've got you," he breathed. "I've got you. You're safe." But I wasn't safe. We both knew it. Whatever had just happened, whatever power I just manifested, had painted a target on my back so bright that nothing could hide it. "The Oracle Queen," I whispered against his chest. "Who is she? Why does she want me?" Cashin's arms tightened. "That," he said, his voice rough with emotion I'd never heard from him, "is a very long story, and one I should have told you months ago." Around us, the guard was regrouping, dealing with the aftermath of the fight. But I could feel their eyes on me, see the way they looked at me now. Not as the strange pup they'd taken in, but as something else. Something powerful and dangerous and utterly unknown. Mira approached, her expression grim. "Alpha, we need to move. If that thing reports back." "I know," Cashin cut her off. He looked down at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. Not for himself. For me. "We're going to the old fortress. Now. No stops, no delays. If the Oracle Queen is hunting Sarah, we need walls and wards and every advantage we can get. The fortress has been abandoned for 50 years, one of the warriors protested. It's a ruin. It's also the most defensible position within 3 days' travel, and it has old Seer protections built into the foundations. Cashin snapped. "We're going. That's final." He lifted me easily. I was 8 but still small for my age, and began moving. The guard fell in around us, forming a protective circle that felt both comforting and terrifying. As we traveled through the darkening forest, Cashin spoke quietly, just for me. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I thought we had more time. Thought the Oracle Queen wouldn't move against you until you were older, stronger, trained." He paused. "Your mother made me promise to protect you from her, to keep you hidden until you could defend yourself. I failed." "You didn't fail," I said, though my voice was shaky. "You saved me. Again. For now." His expression was grim. "But the Oracle Queen doesn't give up. She's been hunting seers for 20 years, killing or corrupting everyone she finds. Your mother was one of the few who escaped her." He looked at me. "And you, Sarah, are the daughter of her greatest enemy. A bloodline the Oracle Queen thought she'd eliminated entirely." Pieces were clicking into place. Terrible, frightening pieces. "My mother didn't just know you. She was running from the Oracle Queen. And when she knew she was dying, she sent me to the one person who might be able to keep me safe from her. Your mother was brilliant, brave, and more powerful than she ever let anyone know," Cashin said quietly. "And yes, she was hunted. We both were, once upon a time. She chose to disappear into pack life, to hide her gifts and live quietly. I chose to fight, to build the Nightshade Guard as a force that could stand against wolves like the Oracle Queen. And now the Oracle Queen knows I exist, I whispered. Knows I have seer gifts. Knows exactly where to find me. Yes. He didn't sugarcoat it, which means everything changes. No more training exercises. No more gradual learning. We have maybe weeks before she comes for you herself. Weeks to turn you from a child with raw power into someone who can survive against the most dangerous seer alive. I thought about the vision I'd seen. Cassian on his knees, surrounded by enemies, the Oracle Queen standing over him with death in her hands. In my vision, I said slowly, she killed you. Is that a real future? Something that will happen? Cassian's jaw tightened. Seer visions show possible futures, not certain ones. What you saw is one path. Our job now is to make sure we walk a different one. How? He looked down at me, and despite everything, he smiled, fierce and determined and absolutely unbreakable. By making you stronger than she expects. By teaching you everything your mother knew and more. By turning you into the one thing the Oracle Queen fears most. What's that? A seer she can't control. Chapter 5. The Fortress of Echoes. The fortress appeared through the morning mist like something from a nightmare. It had been grand once. I could see that in the bones of it. Massive stone walls rising from the mountainside. Towers that must have scraped the sky when they still had roofs. Gates wide enough for armies to march through side by side. But 50 years of abandonment had turned grandeur into ruin. Vines choked the walls. Trees grew through collapsed sections. Parts of the structure had fallen away entirely, leaving gaping wounds that exposed the fortress's interior to the elements. This is where we're supposed to be safe, one of the younger warriors muttered. Cassian didn't answer immediately. He stood at the edge of the clearing, studying the fortress with an expression I couldn't read. Finally, he said, this was the sanctum of seers. Before the Oracle Queen's purge, before seers were hunted to extinction, this place was their stronghold, their training ground. There, he paused. Their home. Your grandmother lived here, I said quietly, the knowledge coming not from memory but from somewhere deeper. Seer intuition, reading the truth from the set of his shoulders, the weight in his voice. He glanced at me, surprised. Yes, she was one of the last. When the Oracle Queen began her campaign, my grandmother sent me away. I was only 12 and stayed to defend this place with the other seers. His voice went hard. But the wards did, Mira said, stepping up beside us. She was studying the fortress with a scout's eye. I can feel them. Old magic, powerful magic, still active after all these years. Seer wards don't fade like pack magic, Cassian explained. They're keyed to bloodlines, to intention. My grandmother designed these specifically to protect against the Oracle Queen and her servants. As long as the foundations stand, the wards hold. He looked at me. And as long as you're here, Sarah, this place will recognize you. Seer blood calls to seer magic. We approached the main gate cautiously. The guard fanned out, checking for threats, but I could feel it. The wards recognizing something in my blood, in my power. The air itself seemed to shimmer around me. When Cassian and I crossed the threshold together, the fortress woke. Light bloomed along the walls, not torchlight but something purer. The same golden glow that had erupted from me when the shadow creature attacked. Symbols I'd never seen before appeared on the stone, glowing and beautiful and incomprehensible. By the moon goddess, one of the warriors breathed. It's still alive. Not alive, Cassian corrected, but his voice held wonder. Awake. The fortress recognizes seer blood. It knows Sarah has come. He placed his hand on the wall, and more lights appeared, spreading like wildfire through the structure. And through me, it remembers my grandmother. We're safe here. For now. Over the next few hours, we explored the fortress and discovered it was far less ruined than it appeared from outside. The damage was real, but the core structures, the great hall, the training rooms, the libraries, the living quarters, remained intact, protected by wards that had preserved them like insects in amber. The guard began setting up camp in the great hall, building fires, establishing watch rotations, turning this ancient place into a functional base. But Cassian took me deeper, into sections of the fortress that even the guard wouldn't enter. This was the seer's wing, he said, leading me down a corridor that glowed with soft light, where my grandmother lived and trained, where she taught me what little I could learn before. He stopped. Before she sent me away, we entered a circular room with a domed ceiling painted with constellations. Books lined the walls. Hundreds of them, ancient and preserved by seer magic. At the center stood a round table covered in what looked like star charts, and around the perimeter were symbols carved deep into the stone floor. "This is where we'll train," Cashin said. "Real training, Sarah. Not swords and tracking. I mean teaching you to control your gifts, to understand your visions, to defend yourself against Seer attacks." He paused. "It's going to be harder than anything you've experienced. More painful. More frightening. Are you ready?" I thought about the shadow creature, about the Oracle Queen from my vision, about the future where Cashin died protecting me. "I'm ready," I said. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Then we begin now. First lesson, understanding what you are. Sit." I sat cross-legged on the floor, and he sat across from me, close enough that our knees almost touched. "Seers are born, not made," he began. "The gift runs in bloodlines, and it manifests differently in each generation. Your mother had what we call true sight, the ability to see truth, to sense lies, to read a person's intentions. My grandmother had far sight. She could send her consciousness across vast distances, see events happening miles away. What do I have?" I asked. "You have what's rarest and most dangerous. Time sight. You see possible futures, probable outcomes, the threads of fate as they weave together." He leaned forward. "That vision you had of me and the Oracle Queen, that wasn't imagination. That was one potential future. If we make certain choices, take certain actions, that future becomes real. How do I stop it? By seeing the other paths. By understanding that every choice creates new futures, new possibilities." He pulled out a small knife. "Watch." He held the knife over his palm, and I tensed, knowing what was coming. But instead of cutting himself, he stopped. "Right now, there are two immediate futures. In one, I cut my hand and bleed. In the other, I don't. Small choice, small consequences. Now focus on those two futures. Tell me what you see." I closed my eyes, tried to reach for that space where visions came from. At first, there was nothing. Then, I saw it. Two threads of possibility, thin as spider silk. In one, Cashin's hand was bleeding and Mira came running at his shout, worried he was injured. In the other, he set the knife down and we continued talking, undisturbed. "I see them," I whispered. "Two paths. Good. Now watch what happens when I choose." He cut his palm. Not deep, but enough to bleed. And I felt it. The moment when one possible future collapsed into reality and the other dissolved into might have been. "That's the fundamental truth of time sight," Cashin said, wrapping his hand. "The future isn't fixed. It's fluid. Every choice, every action, reshapes what's possible. Your visions show you the most likely outcomes based on current circumstances. But circumstances can change. So the vision of you dying is one possible future," he interrupted firmly. "Not the only one. Not inevitable. Our job is to see all the paths and choose the one where we survive." Over the following days, Cashin pushed me harder than he ever had before. We trained from dawn until long past dark, and not just with my seer gifts. He made me continue my combat training, my tracking exercises, all the physical skills I'd been learning with the guard. "A seer with no physical training is a target," he explained after I complained about the bruises covering my body. "You need to be able to fight, to run, to survive even if your gifts fail you. The Oracle Queen won't hesitate to hurt you physically while attacking you mentally." But the mental training was worse. He taught me to enter a meditative state where I could sort through visions without being overwhelmed by them. Taught me to identify which futures were probable versus merely possible. Taught me to extend my awareness into the immediate future, seconds or minutes ahead, so I could predict attacks before they came. That last one nearly broke me. "Again," Cashin said for the 20th time that afternoon. We were in one of the training rooms, and he'd been throwing practice knives at me while I tried to use time sight to dodge them. I was exhausted, bleeding from a dozen small cuts where I'd been too slow, my head pounding from the effort of maintaining future sight for extended periods. "I can't," I gasped. "I can't see fast enough." "You can't see in time with your eyes," he said, not unkindly. "You're trying to watch the knife and see the future simultaneously. That doesn't work. You have to trust the sight, let it guide your body without thinking." "I don't know how." "Yes, you do." He moved closer. "When the shadow creature attacked, you didn't think. You reacted. Your seer gift and your body moved as one. Find that place again." I closed my eyes, tried to remember that moment of desperate instinct. Tried to sink into the space where future and present blurred together. Good, Cashin said. Now stay there. Don't think. Just be. I heard the knife leaving his hand before my ears registered the sound. Felt the future where it struck my shoulder. And my body moved, not consciously, but instinctively, twisting aside. The knife passed harmlessly by. Again. Another knife. Another dodge. My body flowing through movements I hadn't consciously chosen, guided by futures I could feel but not quite see. 5 knives. 10. 20. I dodged them all. When I finally opened my eyes, I was shaking with exhaustion but also exhilaration. I did it. You did it, Cashin agreed, and the pride in his voice made something warm bloom in my chest. 3 weeks of training, and you've already progressed further than most seers do in years. Your mother would be proud. The mention of my mother brought tears to my eyes. They still did, even after all these months. But this time they weren't entirely sad, because I was becoming something she'd have been proud of, something strong enough to survive. That night, unable to sleep, I wandered the fortress halls. The wards recognized me now, lighting my path automatically, and I found myself drawn to the highest tower, one of the few that still had an intact roof. The view from the top was breathtaking. Forests stretched in every direction, and above, the stars were so bright they seemed close enough to touch. Couldn't sleep either? I turned to find Cashin emerging from the stairwell. He joined me at the edge, looking out over the same view. I keep thinking about the Oracle Queen, I admitted. About why she hunts seers. What did we do to her that makes her hate us so much? Cashin was quiet for a long moment. She doesn't hate seers. She fears them. There's a difference. Fear makes her kill children. Fear makes people do terrible things. He leaned against the parapet. The Oracle Queen wasn't always what she is now. Once she was like you, a young seer with incredible gifts. But she wanted more than just sight. She wanted power, control. She found old magic, forbidden magic, that let her twist her seer abilities into something else. Something darker. What kind of magic? The kind that requires sacrifice. Other seers' lives drained to feed her power. His voice went hard. She killed her own sister to complete the transformation. Became something that wasn't quite seer, wasn't quite wolf, wasn't quite anything natural. She calls herself the Oracle Queen because she believes she's transcended normal seer limitations. And now she kills other seers because she can't risk anyone else becoming what she is. Can't risk someone challenging her power. And because she needs their deaths to maintain what she's become. He looked at me. Your mother escaped her 20 years ago, during the Great Purge. The Oracle Queen has been hunting her ever since. When you were born, when your gifts manifested, you became her unfinished business. She's going to keep coming for me, I said. It wasn't a question. Yes. He didn't lie to me, didn't try to soften it. Until one of you is dead, this won't end. I thought about that, about growing up always looking over my shoulder, always waiting for the Oracle Queen's next attack. About the futures I'd seen where Cashin died protecting me. Then I need to be strong enough to end it, I said quietly. Strong enough that she can't hurt me, or anyone I care about. Cashin looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Something between admiration and sorrow. You're 8 years old, Sarah. You shouldn't have to think like that. I stopped being a normal 8-year-old when Crimson Vale exiled me. I met his eyes. Maybe I was never meant to be normal at all. Maybe this. I gestured to the fortress, to the stars, to the whole impossible situation, is what I was born for. Maybe, he agreed softly. Your mother certainly believed you were destined for something extraordinary. That's why she sent you to me. She knew, he stopped. Knew what? He seemed to struggle with something internal, then finally said, knew that I'd do anything to protect you. Because 20 years ago, she saved my life when the Oracle Queen was hunting me. I owed her a debt I could never repay. And when she sent you to me with that wayfinder, she was calling in that debt. That's why you took me in, I said, understanding dawning. Not out of kindness. Out of obligation. It started as obligation, he admitted. But Sarah, it stopped being that within a week. You're not a debt to me. He seemed to catch himself. You're part of the guard now. Part of our family. And I protect family. The words were careful, measured, but there was something underneath them. Something that felt bigger than obligation or family or simple protection. I wanted to push, to ask what he really meant. But I was 8 years old and he was 26, and even I understood that some questions had to wait. Instead, I said, Thank you. For training me. For keeping me safe. For not giving up on me even when I'm difficult. He smiled, rare and genuine. You're not difficult, Sarah. You're determined. There's a difference. He stood. Come on. It's late, and tomorrow we start advanced vision work. You'll need rest. As we descended the tower together, I felt something settle in my chest, a sense of purpose I hadn't had since my mother died. The Oracle Queen was coming. That was certain. But I had time to prepare. Had Cashin to teach me. Had the guard to support me. And I had gifts the Oracle Queen couldn't imagine, because I was still growing, still learning, still becoming. She'd hunted my mother for 20 years and failed to catch her. I wouldn't run. When she finally came for me, I'd be ready. Chapter 6, 3 years later. On my 11th birthday, I killed my first rogue wolf. Not in practice. Not in training. In real combat, during a raid on a slaver camp that was trafficking young wolves to fighting pits in the human territories. The rogue was twice my size, experienced and vicious, and he'd gotten past our perimeter to reach the cages where we'd locked the rescued victims. He had a knife at a child's throat when I found him. I didn't hesitate, didn't think. My body moved with the precision of 3 years' brutal training, and my seer sight showed me exactly where he'd move, exactly how to counter. Sword through the heart. Clean. Efficient. Final. The child lived. The rogue didn't. And I felt nothing. That was what scared me most. Not the killing itself, but how easy it had been. How natural it felt to end a life that threatened someone weaker. First kill is always the hardest, Mira said afterward as we rode back to the fortress. But you did what needed doing. Save that pup. That's what matters. But Cashin looked at me differently after that day. Not with disapproval exactly, but with something that might have been concern. Or recognition. I was 11 years old, and I was already dangerous. The 3 years since we'd taken refuge in the Fortress of Echoes had transformed me. I'd grown. Wolf children matured quickly, and I now looked and moved like a human 14 or 15-year-old. My white hair fell past my shoulders when unbraided. My body was lean muscle and controlled power. My red eyes, which had once marked me as cursed, now carried an intensity that made grown warriors uncomfortable. I could hold my own against any guard member in combat. Could track prey through conditions that would lose experienced scouts. Could read futures minutes in advance, sometimes hours if I pushed. And I could kill without hesitation when necessary. You're worried about her, I heard Mira say to Cashin one evening. I was supposed to be sleeping, but I'd learned to move silently through the fortress, and eavesdropping had become one of my less admirable skills. She's 11 years old and already more lethal than half our warriors, Cashin replied, his voice heavy. That's not natural development. That's what happens when you train a child to be a weapon. You didn't have a choice. The Oracle Queen hasn't attacked in 3 years, Cashin interrupted. 3 years, Mira. Not a single move. Not one attempt. What if I push Sarah too hard for a threat that isn't coming? Or what if the Oracle Queen is biding her time, waiting for exactly this, for you to let your guard down? Mira countered. Sarah needed that training. Still needs it. She needs to be a child, Cashin said quietly. She needs friends her age, normal experiences, a life that isn't just combat and visions and preparing for war. She needs to survive, Mira said firmly. Everything else is secondary. I slipped away before they could notice me, their words echoing in my head. Was Cashin right? Had I lost something essential in becoming strong? I found myself in the Seer's wing, in the circular training room where Cashin and I had spent countless hours. The walls were covered now with my own charts and notes. Futures I'd seen, paths I'd tracked, probabilities I'd calculated. I was good at this. Better than good. Cashin said I had more natural talent than any seer he'd known except his grandmother. But was talent worth the cost? I traced one of my future maps, a complex web showing possible outcomes for a mission we were planning next month. 37 different paths, each branching into dozens more. I'd learned to see them all simultaneously, to calculate which choices led to success and which led to disaster. It was useful, powerful. It had saved lives. It also meant I rarely experienced anything without having already seen its possible outcomes. Meant I calculated risk and probability in every interaction. Meant spontaneity and surprise had become foreign concepts. I was becoming my gift instead of a person who had a gift. You're thinking too loud. I spun to find Cashin in the doorway. He'd changed over the 3 years too, seemed older, more careworn, though his silver hair showed no gray and his amber eyes remained sharp. I heard you, I said. Earlier. Talking to Mira about me. He had the grace not to lie. I shouldn't have said those things where you might overhear. But you meant them. I turned back to my future maps. You think you made me into a weapon. I think I did what I thought necessary to keep you alive, he said, entering the room. Whether that was right or wrong, he shook his head. I honestly don't know anymore. The Oracle Queen is still out there, I said. My visions show her. Not often, but sometimes. She's patient. Waiting. Planning. You were right to train me. Maybe. He stood beside me, studying the maps. But Mira was right too. You need more than just survival skills. He paused. When's the last time you did something just because you wanted to? Not because it served the mission or helped with training. Just for yourself. I thought about it and couldn't remember. Every choice I made was calculated, purposeful, directed toward becoming stronger. I don't know, I admitted quietly. That's what worries me. He turned to face me, and his expression was troubled. Sarah, you're brilliant. Powerful. One of the finest warriors I've ever trained. But you're also 11 years old, and you should have more in your life than duty and discipline. What else is there? I asked, genuinely confused. The Oracle Queen wants me dead. Rogues attack our territories constantly. The Guard needs you alive and sane more than they need you perfect, Cashin interrupted. And you need, he seemed to struggle for words. You need to remember why we fight. Not just to survive, but to protect something worth surviving for. I don't understand. He smiled sadly. I know. That's my failure, not yours. He moved to the door, then paused. Tomorrow, you and I are taking a day. No training, no missions, no future sight practice. Just a day to exist without purpose. But the caravan protection detail. Mira can handle it. His tone brooked no argument. That's an order, Sarah. We're taking a day off. He left before I could protest further. A day off. I tried to imagine what that would even look like and couldn't. 3 years of constant training, constant vigilance, constant preparation had made rest feel like failure. I did. Of course I did. But I also saw the futures where eventually, years from now, those boundaries wouldn't exist. Where what was wrong now would be right later. I'm sorry, I said finally. You're right. I shouldn't have. No, I'm sorry. He sat down heavily on a rock. I brought you here to help you remember you're more than a weapon, and instead he shook his head. This is my failure, Sarah. Not yours. I've been your guardian, your teacher, the closest thing to a father figure you have. I should never have let anything blur those lines. You didn't, I said honestly. You've never been anything but appropriate. I'm the one seeing things that shouldn't exist yet. Yet, he looked at me sharply. I shrugged helplessly. Time sight shows probable futures. In some of them, I stopped. But those are 7, 8, 10 years away. When I'm grown. When it would be acceptable. There's no future where this is acceptable, Cashin said, but his voice lacked conviction. I'm your guardian. That creates a power dynamic that doesn't just disappear when you reach adulthood. Then stop being my guardian, I said simply. Make me a full guard member. Treat me like any other warrior. Remove the power dynamic. You're 11, and already more dangerous than most of your warriors. You said it yourself. I moved closer. I'm not asking for anything inappropriate now, Cashin. I'm not a child trying to seduce her guardian. I'm just saying. I struggled for words. I'm just saying that I see possible futures. And in some of them, we end up matching to each other in ways that go beyond duty. And those futures aren't wrong or twisted. They're just later. He stared at me for a long moment. You see us together. In the future. In some futures, yes. Sarah, Seer visions show possibilities, not certainties. You know that. I know, I agreed. But I also know probability. And the futures where we matter to each other? They're more probable than the ones where we don't. He was quiet for a long time, watching the sunset paint the valley in impossible colors. Finally, he said, even if what you're seeing is true, even if there are futures where something develops between us when you're older, right now, in this moment, you're a child under my protection. That's the only truth that matters. I know, I said again, and I'm not asking you to change that. I just wanted you to know. I paused. I wanted you to know that whatever you're feeling guilty about, whatever makes you think you've failed me, it's not your fault. Some things are just inevitable. Nothing is inevitable, he said softly. That's the whole point of Seer sight. Futures change with every choice. Some futures are more persistent than others, I countered. Some paths keep appearing no matter how many choices try to avoid them. He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw the war in his eyes. Duty versus desire, what was right versus what might someday be possible. We should go, he said finally, before it gets too dark to see the path. We walked back in silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who'd acknowledged a truth too complicated to fully address. Too early for action, too real to ignore. When we reached the fortress, Cashin stopped at the gate. Sarah, what we talked about today stays between us, I finished. I know. I won't mention it again. Not until. I paused. Not until it would be appropriate. It will never be appropriate, he said, but there was no conviction in it. Just hope that he was wrong. I smiled sadly. Keep telling yourself that. Your grandmother was a seer. She probably saw this coming decades ago. He flinched like I'd struck him. What? Why else would she have carved her name so close to yours on that tree? Why else would she have told you about that valley the day she sent you away? I met his eyes. She knew, Cashin. Knew you'd bring me there someday. Knew what might grow between us eventually. That's why she made my mother promise to send me to you specifically. It wasn't just about keeping me safe from the Oracle Queen. It was about ensuring certain futures had a chance to exist. He stopped. You can't know that. I'm a seer. We specialize in knowing things. I touched his arm briefly. It's okay. We have years before any of this matters. Years for you to come to terms with it. Years for me to grow into someone who can actually be your equal instead of your responsibility. I left him standing there and made my way to my quarters. Behind me, I felt his eyes tracking my movement, felt the weight of futures shifting and reforming around the truths we'd acknowledged. 7 years, my sight whispered. In the most probable futures, 7 years until we crossed that line. 7 years to become strong enough to survive the Oracle Queen, to grow into adulthood, to transform from the child he protected into something else entirely. It felt like forever and no time at all. Chapter 7. The Oracle Queen's Move. The attack came 3 months after my conversation with Cashin at the Vale of Remembrance. We'd just returned from a mission, standard patrol, checking on remote settlements for rogue activity. Nothing unusual. Nothing that should have triggered alarm. But as we approached the fortress in the pre-dawn darkness, every instinct I had screamed warning. Stop, I said, my hand shooting up to halt the column. The guard froze instantly, hands moving to weapons. Something's wrong. Cashin moved up beside me, his eyes scanning the fortress ahead. To normal sight, it looked unchanged, the ancient walls, the glowing wards, everything as we'd left it. But I could feel it, a wrongness in the air, like reality itself had been wounded. The wards are intact, Mira said from behind us. I can see them glowing. They're not real, I interrupted, my seer sight activating fully. The world overlaid with possibility, with truth, with what actually existed beneath the illusion. They're an echo, a memory of the wards. The real ones fell hours ago. Cashin's expression went hard. How many? I pushed my sight further, deeper, seeing through stone and shadow to the truth inside the fortress. What I found made my blood run cold. 12, I whispered. Shadow creatures like the one that attacked me 3 years ago. And my breath caught. And her. She's here. The Oracle Queen is inside our fortress. The guard erupted into controlled chaos. Warriors checking weapons, Mira organizing defensive positions, everyone preparing for a fight we might not survive. But Cashin just looked at me, his amber eyes steady. Can we win? I sorted through futures, dozens, hundreds, 1,000 branching possibilities. In most of them we died. The Oracle Queen was too powerful, had chosen her moment too perfectly, had brought too many forces. But there were a few paths. Narrow, unlikely, but possible. Yes, I said. But only if I go in alone. Absolutely not, Cashin said immediately. It's the only way. I showed him what I'd seen. Futures where we attacked as a group and got slaughtered. Futures where we retreated and she hunted us down. Futures where we tried to negotiate and she killed us slowly. She's not here for the guard. She's here for me. If I go in alone, she'll focus on me. That gives you and the others a chance to get behind her, to strike while she's distracted. You're 11 years old, Cashin said through gritted teeth. I'm not sending you to face the most dangerous seer alive alone. You're not sending me, I corrected. I'm going, because it's the only path where most of us survive. I met his eyes. You trained me for this. You made me strong enough for exactly this moment. Trust that training. Trust me. He looked like he wanted to argue, to forbid it, to physically prevent me from going. But he was also a brilliant tactician, and he could see the same probabilities I did. 5 minutes, he said finally. You go in, keep her attention for 5 minutes while we circle around. Then we come in together and end this. 7 minutes, I countered. I need time to tire her out, make her drop her guard. 6 minutes. Not a second more. I nodded. 6 minutes. I can do that. Mira handed me weapons. My sword, 3 knives, a short spear. Come back alive, pup. That's an order. I'll do my best. Cashin caught my arm as I turned to go. For a moment, I thought he'd pull me back, change his mind, decide the risk was too great. Instead, he pulled me into a brief, fierce embrace. You survive, he said against my hair. Whatever it takes. You survive and come back to us. I will, I promised, though my seer sight showed me futures where that was a lie. Then I was moving, sprinting toward the fortress alone while the guards circled to find entry points the Oracle Queen wouldn't be watching. The false wards didn't stop me. They were just illusion, after all, meant to keep us complacent while the Oracle Queen prepared her trap. I slipped through the main gate and into the courtyard. It was eerily quiet. No guards, no movement, just empty stone and dying torchlight. Seraphina Thorn. The voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere, beautiful and terrible. The daughter of Elena. The child I've been waiting 3 years to meet. Oracle Queen. I called back, keeping my voice steady despite the fear threatening to choke me. I'm here. You can leave my people alone. Laughter, cold and cruel. Your people? Child, you've been with the Nightshade Guard for 3 years. That doesn't make them family. Doesn't make them anything except convenient shields. They're more family than you'll ever understand. I shot back. Perhaps. The Oracle Queen materialized from shadows at the far end of the courtyard. And she was nothing like I'd expected. She was young, maybe 25, stunningly beautiful, with long white hair that floated around her like she was underwater. Her eyes were the same burning white I'd seen in the shadow creature, and she wore a crown that seemed made of moonlight and bone. But underneath the beauty, I could see what she really was. My seer sight showed me the truth. The patchwork of stolen lives holding her together, the corruption eating at her from within, the desperate hunger that drove her to consume other seers. She was dying, had been dying for years, and she needed me to survive. You see it, she said, noticing my expression. Good. Your mother never could. She looked at me and saw only the monster, never the tragedy. She moved closer, graceful as a dancer. Do you know what happens to seers who try to transcend their limitations, little Sarah? They burn. Slowly, painfully, consuming themselves from the inside. I've been burning for 20 years. Then stop, I said. Let it end. Accept what you've become and let go. I could, she agreed. Or I could take your gift, your young, powerful, untainted seer blood, and buy myself another 20 years. Maybe more. Your mother's bloodline was always the strongest. Imagine what I could do with it. She raised her hand, and power exploded toward me. The same burning white light from my vision, the light that could kill even wolves. I dove aside, my seer sight showing me where the blast would be before she'd fully formed it. The light scorched the stone where I'd been standing, leaving a crater that glowed with residual heat. Fast, the Oracle Queen observed. Your mother was fast too, but not fast enough in the end. Rage flared in my chest. You killed her. Not directly, but the wound that killed her. Yes, that was mine. 3 years before she died, when she thought she'd escaped me. The Oracle Queen smiled. I cursed it, made it so it would never heal, would slowly poison her. I wanted her to suffer, to know death was coming and be powerless to stop it. The world went red. My mother's death, the infection that had eaten her slowly, the wound that wouldn't heal despite all her skill, that had been the Oracle Queen's doing. I attacked. Not with power, with steel. My sword flashed in the dim light as I closed the distance between us. Every bit of training Cashin had drilled into me, guiding my movements. The Oracle Queen blocked with magic, shields of white light appearing to deflect my strikes. But I was fast, relentless, and I had something she didn't. Time sight showing me where she'd be before she moved. We danced through the courtyard, my blade against her magic, both of us testing, probing, searching for weakness. Impressive, she said, not even breathing hard while I was already starting to tire. Cashin trained you well. Did he tell you he was mine once? Years ago, before he built his little guard? I had such plans for him. Liar. I spat, but I felt the seed of doubt. Ask him yourself. Ask him why he has a seer pendant when he's not seer-born. Ask him why he knows so much about seer magic when his grandmother died before she could teach him properly. Her smile widened. Ask him what price he paid to escape me. She struck again, and this time I was too slow. White light caught my shoulder, and pain exploded through me. Not just physical, but deeper. Soul deep. Like she was trying to rip my seer gift right out of my body. I screamed and fell, my sword clattering away. There we go, the Oracle Queen said, moving closer. No more games. No more dancing. Time to take what's mine. She reached for me, her hand glowing with that terrible light. And Cashin hit her from the side like a battering ram. They went down together in a tangle of limbs and fury. The Oracle Queen shrieked, more surprised than hurt, and white light exploded from her in all directions. Cashin rolled away, coming up with his sword drawn, placing himself between me and her. You want her? You go through me. Cashin Silvermane, the Oracle Queen said, standing and brushing herself off like this was merely inconvenient. My greatest disappointment. I offered you power, knowledge, everything you wanted. And you chose to run. I chose to live, Cashin corrected. There's a difference. Is there? She tilted her head. Look at you. Building an army, training a child soldier, preparing for war. You didn't escape me, darling. You became me. I became what I needed to be to stop you, Cashin said. That's not the same thing. The guard was pouring in now, through windows, through side entrances, surrounding the Oracle Queen on all sides. Mira led one group, other commanders led others, all of them converging with deadly precision. The Oracle Queen looked around, assessment in those white eyes. She was outnumbered, outflanked, and I could see her calculating whether this fight was still winnable. Clever, she said finally. Use the child as bait, circle behind me while I'm distracted. Very clever, Cashin. You learned that trick from me, if I recall. I learned a lot of things from you, Cashin said, including how to recognize when I'm beat. Surrender. Face justice for what you've done. Justice? She laughed. From whom? Pack courts that fear seers? Alpha councils that would love an excuse to execute me? There is no justice for what I am, darling. Only death or freedom. She looked at me, and something in her expression softened almost imperceptibly. I'm sorry, little Sarah. Sorry I couldn't take your gift quickly. Sorry you'll have to live with it, burning you from the inside, until you become what I am. Because that's the truth your mother never told you. All powerful seers eventually face the same choice. Transcend or die. There is no third option. You're wrong, I said, forcing myself to my feet despite the pain in my shoulder. My mother found a third option. She lived quietly, used her gifts to heal instead of harm, and died with her soul intact. That's the path I'm choosing. Then you'll die young and powerless, the Oracle Queen said. What a waste. She raised both hands, and I felt reality itself begin to tear. She was opening a portal, preparing to escape rather than fight a battle she couldn't win. No, I reached for my power, for anything that could stop her, and something inside me broke open. Not my seer sight. Something deeper, older, something that had been sleeping in my blood since birth. Power flooded through me, golden and fierce and absolutely certain. The Oracle Queen's portal collapsed. She stumbled, shock clear on her face. That's not, you can't. I'm not just my mother's daughter, I said, and my voice carried that strange resonance again, the one that had spoken through me when the shadow creature attacked 3 years ago. I'm descended from the first seers, the ones who built this fortress, the ones whose blood runs pure and true. And you? I moved forward, power crackling around me like lightning. You are a corruption, an aberration, a thing that should not exist. The Oracle Queen actually looked afraid. No, you're untrained. You shouldn't be able to access that power for years. Desperation accelerates development, I said, and I didn't know where the words were coming from, only that they were true. You pushed me too far, too fast. Made me reach for power I wasn't ready for. And now, I raised my hand, mimicking her gesture, and golden light built in my palm. Now I'm going to unmake what you've become. Sarah, stop. Cashin's voice, urgent and afraid. That power will burn you out. You're not strong enough to wield it safely. I know, I said calmly. But I can hold it long enough. Long enough to end her. Long enough to make sure she never hurts anyone again. I saw the futures splitting before me. In one, I held back, preserved myself, and the Oracle Queen escaped to hunt us another day. In another, I unleashed everything, destroyed her completely, and burned myself out in the process. Left alive but powerless, my Seer gift consumed in one terrible moment. The choice should have been easy. Self-preservation over vengeance. But I saw the other futures too. The ones where the Oracle Queen survived. Where she killed Cashin, killed Mira, killed everyone I cared about. Where she hunted other young seers and consumed them one by one until no one could stop her. Those futures were worse than losing my power. Worse than anything. Sarah, please, Cashin said, and I heard real anguish in his voice. Don't do this. We'll find another way. There is no other way, I said softly. I'm sorry. I unleashed everything. Golden light exploded from me like a star going nova. It caught the Oracle Queen mid-escape, wrapped around her, pulled at the stolen lives and corrupted power holding her together. She screamed, a sound of pure agony and rage and desperate terror. You're just like me, she gasped as the light consumed her. You'll burn just like I did. You'll become. I'm nothing like you, I said, because I choose to burn myself out rather than consume others. That's the difference between us. That's why I win. The light grew brighter, hotter, more intense. I could feel my Seer gift unraveling. The power that had defined me since birth burning away like paper in a fire. It hurt worse than anything I'd ever experienced. But the Oracle Queen was unraveling too. Her stolen powers were dissolving, her corruption was being burned away, and underneath I saw what she'd once been. A young seer, desperate and afraid, who'd made one terrible choice that led to all the others. I'm sorry, I whispered to that girl. I'm sorry you thought this was the only way. Then she was gone. Completely. Nothing left but ash and fading light. And I was falling, the power that had held me up vanishing along with my Seer gifts. The last thing I felt was Cashin catching me, his voice calling my name, his fear bleeding through even his careful control. Then darkness took me, and I fell into a sleep deeper than dreams. Chapter 8, The Price of Power. I woke to silence. Not the peaceful silence of sleep, but an absolute, profound silence that felt wrong. Like part of the world had been muted, leaving only echoes. My eyes opened slowly. I was in my quarters in the fortress, in my own bed, with morning light streaming through the window. Someone had bandaged my shoulder where the Oracle Queen's light had burned me. Someone had changed my clothes, braided my hair back, made me comfortable. But something was missing. Something essential. I reached for my Seer's sight, that constant presence that had been with me since I could remember. Nothing. The futures that normally spread before me like a vast web were gone. The sense of possibility, of paths branching endlessly forward, had vanished. I could see the present moment clearly enough, but beyond it, nothing. Just normal uncertainty, the kind regular wolves lived with every day. My Seer gift was gone. You're awake. Cashin's voice, rough with exhaustion. He was sitting in a chair beside my bed, and from the look of him, he'd been there for days. His silver hair was disheveled, his face drawn, his amber eyes shadowed with something that might have been grief. How long? I asked, my voice coming out hoarse. 5 days. Sage said you burned yourself out so completely that your body shut down to recover. He leaned forward. How do you feel? Empty, I whispered. I can't see. Can't feel the futures. Can't sense anything beyond right now. Panic clawed at my chest. Cashin, I can't see. I know. He moved to sit on the edge of the bed, taking my hand. The Oracle Queen is dead. You destroyed her completely. But the cost. His voice broke slightly. The cost was your gift. Maybe permanently. Maybe. Sage isn't sure. Seer gifts that burn out this catastrophically sometimes regenerate over years. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they come back different, weaker, or warped. He squeezed my hand. We won't know for months. Maybe years. I tried to process that. My entire life had been defined by my Seer abilities. The visions, the time sight, the power that made me valuable and dangerous in equal measure. Without it, who was I? The guard, I asked, deflecting from thoughts too painful to face. Unharmed. The shadow creatures dissolved when the Oracle Queen died. Some minor injuries from the initial breach, but everyone survived. He paused. Because you gave us the plan that worked. Because you were willing to sacrifice everything. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice, Sarah. You chose to protect us at the cost of your own power. He stopped, seemed to struggle for words. That's the most selfless thing I've ever witnessed. Or the most stupid, I said bitterly. What good am I to the guard now? I'm just a regular wolf. No visions, no tactical advantage, nothing special. You're still one of the finest warriors I've trained, Cashin said firmly. Still brilliant, brave, and more capable than half my guard. The Seer gift doesn't define you, Sarah. It never did. It's all I've ever been, I argued. The cursed blood moon child. The Seer. The one who could see futures and prevent disasters. Without that, you're still Sarah Thorne, Cashin interrupted. Daughter of Elena. Survivor of the Whispering Marsh. The girl who killed the Oracle Queen when no one else could. That's enough. That's more than enough. But it didn't feel like enough. It felt like I'd hollowed myself out, become a shell of what I'd been. Over the following weeks, I tried to adjust to life without my Seer gift. It was harder than I'd imagined. Simple things became difficult. I couldn't predict enemy movements in combat, couldn't sense danger before it arrived, couldn't calculate the best path forward. I had to rely on instinct and training alone, the way normal wolves did. The guard tried to be supportive. Mira gave me progressively harder assignments, pushing me to prove I could still contribute. Other warriors trained with me, helping me adapt my fighting style to account for the loss of precognition. But I felt their pity, saw the way they looked at me now, not with awe or fear or respect, but with sympathy. The prodigy who'd burned too bright and paid the price. You're brooding again, Mira said one afternoon, finding me alone in the training yard. That's the third time this week I've caught you staring at nothing. I'm not brooding. I'm thinking. You're mourning, she corrected, sitting beside me. Mourning something you lost. And that's valid, Sarah. You have every right to grieve. But you can't let it consume you. How am I supposed to move forward? I asked quietly. Everything I trained for, was built on my Seer abilities. Without them, you're still you, Mira interrupted, echoing Cashin's words. Look, I'm not a Seer. Never have been. I've served in the Nightshade Guard for 15 years based purely on skill, dedication, and refusing to quit when things get hard. You can do the same. But you were never anything more than what you are now, I said. I was something greater, and now I stopped, hating how self-pitying I sounded. Lesser, Mira finished. That's what you think. That losing your Seer gift makes you less valuable as a person. Doesn't it? She grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look at her. Listen to me. When you were 11 years old and killed that Oracle Queen, you didn't do it because you were a Seer. You did it because you were brave. Because you chose to sacrifice yourself to protect people you loved. That choice, that courage, that's what made you extraordinary. The Seer gift was just a tool. You're the one who wielded it. I wanted to believe her, wanted to accept that I could be valuable without my gift. But 3 years of defining myself by my abilities had left scars that wouldn't heal easily. That night, I found myself in the Seer's wing. The circular training room that had been my second home for years felt different now. Empty, echoing, no longer responding to my presence the way it once had. I stood in the center where Cashin and I had trained countless times, and I tried to reach for the futures. Tried to see the paths spreading out before me. Nothing. It's not coming back. Cashin's voice from the doorway. I can see it in your face. You're trying to force it. What if it never comes back? I asked, voicing my deepest fear. What if I destroyed it completely? He entered the room, moved to stand across from me in the same position he'd taken hundreds of times during training. Then you adapt. You find new ways to be useful. New purposes. Like what? I'm 11 years old, Cashin. I have no family, no pack, nothing except the guard. And the guard took me in because I was a Seer. Because I was valuable. The guard took you in because your mother asked me to protect you, Cashin corrected. Your value was never contingent on your gifts. Wasn't it? I met his eyes. Be honest. Would you have trained me so intensely if I'd been just a regular wolf pup? Would you have given me so much of your time and attention? He was quiet for a long moment. No, he said finally. Probably not. But that doesn't mean I only cared about your power. It means I recognized that your power made you a target, and I did what was necessary to help you survive. And now that power is gone. So what am I to you now? He stopped, seemed to struggle with something. You're important. Beyond your gifts, beyond your usefulness to the guard. You're important to me personally. As a responsibility, I said. As someone you promised to protect. As more than that. The words came out rough, reluctant. And you know it, Sarah. You've always known it. The conversation from 3 months ago hung between us. The futures I'd seen. The feelings we'd both carefully not acknowledged. The impossible possibility that had felt so certain then. Those futures I saw, I said quietly, where we mattered to each other. I can't see them anymore. Can't know if they're still possible, or if burning out my gift changed everything. Good, Cashin said, and there was relief in his voice. That's good, Sarah. Because those futures, whatever you saw, they can't happen. Not while you're young. Not while I'm responsible for you. I know, I said. But it would be nice to know they existed. To have something to hold on to while I figure out who I am now. He moved closer, close enough that I could see the gold flecks in his amber eyes. Who you are now is the same person you were before. Brave, brilliant, stubborn as hell. The Seer gift was just one part of you. It was never the whole. Then why does losing it feel like losing everything? Because you're 11 years old and you just made an impossible sacrifice and you're grieving, he said gently. But grief passes. Adaptation happens. You'll find a new normal. I promise. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to trust that I could be someone worthwhile without my defining characteristic. But belief required hope, and right now, hope felt very far away. 6 months passed. 6 months of adjusting to life without Seer sight. 6 months of learning to be just another guard member instead of the prodigy. 6 months of slowly, painfully, accepting that my gift might never return. But something else was happening. Something I didn't expect. Without the constant input of future sight, I was learning to focus on the present. To notice details I'd missed before because I'd been too busy looking ahead. To connect with people more deeply because I wasn't calculating probabilities. And I was getting better at combat. Not because I could see my opponent's moves before they made them, but because I was learning to read body language, to anticipate through observation instead of precognition. It was slower, less certain, but in some ways more satisfying. You're adapting, Mira observed during a sparring session. Finally, I blocked her strike and countered. I've been trying this whole time. You've been trying to replicate what you lost, she corrected, disengaging. Now you're building something new. There's a difference. She was right. I'd spent months trying to be the same warrior I was before, just without the Seer advantage. But that was impossible. I had to become something different instead. On the 6-month anniversary of the Oracle Queen's death, Cashin found me in the highest tower. The same place where we'd talked about the Oracle Queen years ago. I've been thinking, he said, joining me at the parapet. About your training. About what comes next. What comes next is I keep training until I'm good enough to pull my weight without Seer gifts, I said. Same as any other warrior. I have a different idea. He pulled out a small wooden box, offered it to me. Open it. Inside was a pendant, silver, with an intricate design that looked like tree branches intertwining. It was beautiful and oddly familiar. That was my grandmother's, Cashin said. She wore it every day until she died. It's not magical, not powerful, just a symbol. A reminder that Seers are more than their gifts. That wisdom, courage, and heart matter more than power. Cashin, I can't. You can, he interrupted. You earned it when you destroyed the Oracle Queen. When you chose sacrifice over survival. My grandmother would have been proud to know you wore it. With shaking hands, I lifted the pendant from the box and fastened it around my neck. The weight of it felt right, like a promise settling into place. Thank you, I whispered. There's more. He turned to face me directly. I'm making you a full member of the Nightshade Guard. Not as a trainee or a protected child, but as a sworn warrior with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. I'm 12 years old. You're 12 years old, and you've proven yourself more capable than warriors twice your age, he said firmly. The guard agrees. We took a vote. You're in if you want it. If I wanted it. A real place, a real purpose. Recognition that I mattered beyond my lost gifts. Yes, I said, my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. Yes, I want it. He smiled. That rare, genuine smile that transformed his face. Then kneel. I knelt, and he drew his sword, placed it on my shoulder the way Pack Alphas did when accepting new members. Seraphina Thorn, Do you swear to protect the innocent, to fight against tyranny, to uphold the ideals of the Nightshade Guard? I swear. Do you swear to stand with your brothers and sisters in arms, to never abandon them in their hour of need? I swear. Then rise, Sarah Thorne, full member of the Nightshade Guard. Your past does not define you. Your power does not define you. Only your choices define who you are. I stood, and impulsively, I threw my arms around him. For a moment he stiffened. We'd maintained careful physical distance since our conversation at the Vale. But then his arms came around me, holding me close. Thank you, I said against his chest. For everything. For protecting me, for training me, for not giving up when I was difficult. You were never difficult, he murmured. Challenging, occasionally infuriating, but never difficult. He pulled back, his hands on my shoulders. You're going to be fine, Sarah. Better than fine. You're going to be extraordinary, with or without Seer gifts. I wanted to believe him. And for the first time since losing my power, I thought maybe I could. Chapter 9. 5 years of growth. Time moved differently without Seer sight. Before, I'd experienced every moment with the weight of possible futures pressing down on it. Every choice had felt significant, every action loaded with consequence. But without that constant awareness, time became simpler, linear, one moment following another without the burden of knowing what might come. It was in its own way freeing. 5 years passed. 5 years of missions, of training, of slowly building a reputation as something other than the girl who lost her Seer gift. 5 years of becoming someone I could be proud of. I was 17 now, and the transformation was complete. I'd grown tall. Not quite as tall as Cashin, but tall enough that I could look most warriors in the eye. My body was lean muscle and controlled power, honed by years of relentless training. My white hair fell past my waist when unbound, though I usually kept it braided back in complex patterns that doubled as weapon concealment. Myra's idea. My red eyes, which had once marked me as cursed, now just made me distinctive among the guard. I was good at what I did. Not prodigy-level good, not Seer-gifted good, but skilled enough that commanders requested me for difficult missions. Fast enough that few could match me in close combat. Smart enough that I could read situations and adapt quickly. I'd become exactly what Cashin had promised I could be, extraordinary without powers. But something else had changed too. Something I tried very hard not to think about. I'd grown up, and with that growing up came all the complicated feelings I'd set aside 5 years ago when I'd promised Cashin we wouldn't discuss certain futures. He'd changed too, though more subtly. Now 34, he carried himself with an authority that came from years of leading the guard through countless conflicts. His silver hair remained unmarked by age, his amber eyes as sharp as ever. That scar across his face a familiar landmark I'd mapped 1,000 times without meaning to. He was still beautiful. More so now that I was old enough to fully appreciate it. And he was still carefully, deliberately maintaining distance. You're staring again, Mira said, pulling me from my thoughts. We were on patrol together, checking the perimeter around a village that had reported strange activity. I'm not staring. I'm scanning for threats. You're staring at the Alpha, she corrected, using the nickname the guard had adopted for Cashin years ago. Same as you have been for the past year. When are you going to do something about it? Do something about what? I kept my voice carefully neutral. About the fact that you're head over heels for him and have been since you were 11 years old. Mira stopped walking, forcing me to stop too. Sarah, you're 17 now. An adult by any measure. And he's been single for the entire time I've known him, which is suspicious as hell for a man who looks like that. He's my guardian. Was my guardian. It's complicated. It's only complicated if you make it complicated, Mira said. You're not a child anymore. He's not responsible for you anymore. You're both adults who clearly have feelings for each other. What's stopping you? 7 years of established boundaries, I said. 7 years of him treating me like a daughter or a student. 7 years of careful distance. I gestured helplessly. I can't just walk up to him and say, hey, remember when I was 11 and told you I saw futures where we ended up together? Well, I'm grown now, so let's make that happen. Why not? Mira asked. Seems pretty straightforward to me. Because what if I was wrong? The fear I'd been carrying for years finally voiced. What if those visions I saw were just a child's fantasy? What if losing my Seer gift means those futures don't exist anymore? What if I tell him how I feel and he... I stopped, unable to finish. Rejects you? Mira finished gently. Sarah, that's a risk everyone takes when they admit feelings. But from where I'm standing, the chances of him rejecting you are pretty damn low. You don't know that. I've served under Cashin for 15 years, Mira said. I've seen him interact with hundreds of wolves. And I have never, not once, seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you when he thinks no one's watching. My heart did something complicated in my chest. How does he look at me? Like you're precious. Like you're dangerous. Like you're the answer to a question he's been asking for years. She squeezed my shoulder. Like he's in love with you but terrified to admit it. He's not. I started, but the words felt hollow even as I said them. Because the truth was, I'd noticed things too. The way Cashin's eyes tracked me across rooms. The way his voice softened when he spoke to me. The way he found excuses to check in after missions. To train with me personally. To ensure I was safe and whole and thriving. The way he'd never, in 5 years, shown interest in anyone else despite being objectively the most eligible wolf in our territory. What do? I asked quietly. You talk to him, Mira said simply. No games, no hints, no waiting for perfect moments. You sit him down and you tell him the truth. Then you let him decide what he wants to do with it. And if he says no, then at least you'll know, Mira said. And you can start moving on instead of spending the next decade pining for someone you can't have. But Sarah, she smiled. I really don't think he's going to say no. I spent the next week trying to find the courage Mira seemed to think I possessed. It should have been simple. I'd faced down the Oracle Queen, killed rogues, survived impossible missions. Admitting feelings to someone shouldn't be harder than any, but it was. Because all those other battles had clear outcomes, success or death. This was messier, more uncertain, more terrifying in its way. Finally, I decided to just do it. No planning, no overthinking, just finding Cashin and telling him the truth. I found him in his quarters, working on reports by lamplight. It was late. Most of the guard had already retired for the night. Sarah. He looked up as I entered, surprise clear on his face. Is something wrong? No. Maybe. I need to talk to you about something. He set his pen down, giving me his full attention. Of course. What is it? I closed the door behind me, for privacy, though the gesture felt significant. Cashin noticed, his expression becoming wary. This isn't about a mission, I said, before I could lose my nerve. It's personal. All right, he said carefully. I'm listening. I took a breath, tried to organize thoughts that refused to be organized, and finally just said it. Do you remember the conversation we had 5 years ago? At the Vale of Remembrance. His entire body went still. Sarah, please, let me finish. I moved closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in his amber eyes. You said I was too young, that what I thought I felt was trauma response, or imprinting, or anything except real. You said we could never be anything except guardian and ward, alpha and guard member. I remember, he said, his voice tight. I'm 17 now, I continued. An adult. No longer your ward, no longer your responsibility. Just another member of the guard. I paused. And I'm telling you that what I felt 5 years ago wasn't fantasy or imprinting. It's grown stronger, deeper, more certain with every year. Sarah, you don't. I love you, I interrupted, and the words felt like jumping off a cliff. I've loved you since I was 11 years old, probably longer. And I know it's complicated. Know there's history and power dynamics, and a dozen reasons why this is a terrible idea. But I'm not a child anymore. I'm not asking you to reciprocate. I just need you to know. Need to stop carrying this alone. The silence that followed was excruciating. Cashin stared at me like I'd just announced the sky was falling. His expression a mixture of emotions I couldn't parse. Finally, he stood, moved to the window, putting distance between us. You can't, he said quietly. Sarah, you can't feel that way about me. Why not? Because I raised you. He turned, and I saw real anguish in his eyes. Because you came to me as a terrified 7-year-old, and I became the closest thing you had to a parent. That creates a dynamic that doesn't just disappear because you reach adulthood. You didn't raise me, I argued. You trained me, taught me. But I had Mira, had Sage, had a dozen other people who helped shape who I became. You weren't my father, Cashin. You were my teacher and my guardian. There's a difference. Not enough of one, he said roughly. Don't you understand? I was responsible for you. Your well-being, your development, your safety. All of it was on me. Acting on any feelings I might have would be a betrayal of that trust. Might have. I caught the phrase. You have feelings? He closed his eyes. You can't, Sarah. This conversation shouldn't be happening. But it is happening, I said, moving toward him. And you didn't answer the question. Do you have feelings for me? My feelings don't matter, he said, not opening his eyes. What matters is that you deserve someone who came into your life as an equal. Someone who didn't have power over you when you were vulnerable. Someone who isn't you, I finished. That's what you're saying. That even if you wanted this, even if I'm old enough and mature enough and certain enough, we can't have it because of history. Yes, he said, and the word sounded like it cost him everything. That's exactly what I'm saying. I should have accepted it. Should have respected his boundaries, thanked him for his honesty, and left to nurse my broken heart in private. Instead, I said, "You're a coward." His eyes snapped open. "What? You're using our history as an excuse," I said, my voice harder now. "You're hiding behind what's appropriate and what's right because you're afraid. Afraid of what people would think, afraid of complicating the guard, afraid of—" I stopped. "Afraid of wanting something for yourself instead of just duty." "That's not fair," he said, anger finally breaking through his careful control. "Isn't it?" I challenged. "You've spent 5 years watching me grow up, watching me become someone strong and capable and independent. 5 years watching me build a life that doesn't revolve around you. And now that I'm standing here telling you I choose you anyway, not because I need you, but because I want you, you're too scared to admit you might want me too." "I'm not scared," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I'm being responsible." "You're being a martyr," I corrected. "You're sacrificing what you want because you think it's what you should do. But did you ever consider what I want, what I need? Or do I not get a say in this because I'm still just the child you protected?" "You're not a child," he said, frustration clear now. "You're a brilliant, beautiful, infuriating woman who—" He stopped himself. "Who what?" I pressed. He was silent for a long moment, and I saw the war happening behind his eyes. Years of careful restraint fighting against something deeper, more desperate. "Who I've loved since the day you fell out of that tree and looked at me like I was salvation," he finally said, and the admission sounded like it had been torn from him. "Who I've loved through every training session and every mission and every moment I should have kept my distance. Who I love so much it terrifies me because loving you means I could lose you, could fail you, could hurt you in ways I swore I never would." The world stopped. "You love me." "Of course I love you," he said roughly. "How could I not? But love doesn't make this right, Sarah. Love doesn't erase the power I had over you. Love doesn't change the fact that acting on this would be taking advantage." I kissed him, stepped forward, grabbed his shirt, pulled him down, and kissed him with 7 years of pent-up longing and frustration and need. For a heartbeat, he was frozen. Then his control shattered. His arms came around me, pulling me close, and he kissed me back with a desperation that matched my own. It was nothing like I'd imagined. It was better, fiercer, more real. His hands tangled in my hair, mine clutched at his shoulders, and we kissed like we were trying to make up for 7 years of careful distance in a single moment. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead against mine. "This is a terrible idea," he whispered. "Probably," I agreed. "But it's happening anyway. The guard will deal with it, or they won't. Either way, I don't care." I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "I wasted 5 years believing those futures I saw were gone forever. I'm not wasting another 5 years being noble about something we both want." He laughed, the sound rough and unsteady. "When did you get so stubborn?" I learned from the best. I traced the scar on his face, a gesture I'd wanted to make for years. "We don't have to announce anything. Don't have to make a big deal of it. But I need you to stop treating me like I'm fragile. Stop acting like wanting you makes me broken or confused or anything except a woman who knows her own mind." "You're 17, he said, but there was no heat in it now. "In wolf years, that makes me an adult. Old enough to fight, old enough to die, old enough to make my own choices." I held his gaze. "This is my choice, Cashin. You, us, whatever this becomes. And I need to know, can you accept that? Can you let go of the guilt and the history and the fear long enough to see what this could be?" He was quiet for so long I thought he might still refuse. Then he pulled me back into his arms, held me so tightly I could barely breathe, and whispered against my hair, "I'm terrified." "Me too," I admitted. "If this goes wrong, if I hurt you, then we'll deal with it like adults," I interrupted. "But Cashin, you've been protecting me for 10 years. Maybe it's time to trust that I'm strong enough to protect myself." Strong enough to know what I want. Strong enough to choose you without it being a mistake. He pulled back, studied my face like he was memorizing it. Then he smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his face. How did you get so wise? I had an excellent teacher. He kissed me again, softer this time but no less intense. And for the first time in 7 years, I felt complete. Like a piece I'd been missing had finally clicked into place. This is going to be complicated, he murmured between kisses. Everything worth having is complicated. The guard is going to have opinions. The guard can keep their opinions to themselves. Mira is going to say, I told you so. Mira has earned the right to say, I told you so. He laughed again, and I felt it rumble through his chest. I love you, he said, like he was testing the words. I'm in love with you, Sarah Thorne, and I have no idea when it became acceptable to admit that. When I became an adult capable of making my own choices, I said. When the power dynamic shifted from guardian and ward to equals. When you finally stopped seeing me as a child and started seeing me as a woman. I've seen you as a woman for longer than I should admit, he confessed. That's been part of the problem. Then stop seeing it as a problem, I said. And start seeing it as what it is. Two people who love each other finally admitting it. He kissed me again, and this time there was promise in it. Promise of futures we could finally explore, of possibilities that didn't have to remain theoretical, of love that had waited long enough. 7 years. 7 years since I'd seen those futures and believed they were inevitable. Turned out I didn't need seer sight to know where we were heading. I just needed courage. And Cashin needed to stop being noble long enough to want something for himself. We could figure out the rest as we went. Chapter 10, Complications. We kept it quiet for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of stolen moments when the guard wasn't watching, of carefully maintained distance in public, of pretending nothing had changed when everything had. It should have been exciting, romantic even. The secret relationship, the forbidden connection finally acknowledged. And parts of it were. Late-night conversations in his quarters. Training sessions that lingered too long. The way his eyes found mine across crowded rooms and spoke volumes without words. But mostly it was exhausting. You're being paranoid, I said one evening, pulling away from a kiss when Cashin suddenly tensed at a noise outside his door. That's the 3rd time tonight you've thought someone was coming. Because someone might be, he said, moving to check the hallway. Finding it empty, he closed the door again and turned back to me. We need to be careful, Sarah. If the guard finds out before we're ready to tell them. What? What happens? I challenged. They'll disapprove? They'll question your judgment? They'll think I'm too young or you're taking advantage. All of those things, he said bluntly. The guard respects you, Sarah, but you're still one of the youngest members. And I'm the alpha, the power dynamic. We've been over this, I interrupted. The power dynamic exists in your head more than in reality. I'm not some naive pup. I'm a full guard member with 7 years of combat experience. If anything, the real problem is that you can't let go of seeing me as someone you need to protect. Because I do need to protect you, he said, frustration bleeding into his voice. From the guard's judgment, from pack politics, from yourself. I finished. Cashin, you're not doing anything wrong. We're both adults. We both chose this. Why does it feel like you're constantly waiting for someone to tell you it's not allowed? He scrubbed a hand over his face, looking suddenly tired. Because for 7 years it wasn't allowed. 7 years of drawing lines, maintaining boundaries, reminding myself that you were off limits. That doesn't just vanish because we crossed a line. I moved closer, took his hands. Then maybe we need to stop hiding. Stop treating this like something shameful. Just tell the guard and deal with whatever comes. It's been 2 weeks. And how much longer do you want to wait? I asked. A month? A year? Until everyone magically decides it's acceptable? That's not going to happen, Cashin. People are going to judge no matter when we tell them. At least if we're honest now, we control the narrative. He was quiet, torn between his instinct to protect me and the knowledge that I was right. Before he could respond, someone knocked on the door. We sprang apart like guilty teenagers. Cashin took a breath, composed himself, and opened the door. Mira stood there, her expression carefully neutral. Alpha, we need to talk. About what? About the fact that Sarah's been sneaking into your quarters every night for the past 2 weeks, and you're both terrible at hiding it, she said bluntly. Can I come in, or are we pretending this conversation isn't happening? Cashin and I exchanged glances. He stepped aside, letting her enter. Mira closed the door behind her and turned to face us both. So, how long has this been going on? Mira, Cashin started. 2 weeks, I interrupted. No point in lying now. Since the night I told him how I felt. And you thought you could keep it secret. Not a question. In a fortress full of wolves with enhanced senses and too much time on their hands. We were being careful, Cashin said. You were being obvious, Mira corrected. Half the guard has noticed. They're just too polite or too afraid of you to say anything. She looked between us. I'm assuming this is serious? Not just. It's serious, I said firmly. We love each other. Have for years. We're just finally acting on it. Mira nodded slowly. Okay, then here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell the guard. Soon. Before the rumors get worse and people start making up stories that are less kind than the truth. The guard won't approve, Cashin said. Some won't, Mira agreed. They'll question the power dynamic, question whether Sarah can make independent decisions while serving under you, question whether this affects guard cohesion. She paused. But most will just be happy their alpha finally found someone. You've been alone for the 15 years I've known you, Cashin. People want you to be happy. And if they don't, I asked, if they think this is inappropriate, then they're welcome to leave the guard, Mira said with a shrug. We're not a traditional pack. We don't follow traditional rules. We judge people by their actions, not their relationships. She looked at Cashin. You've led this guard with integrity for decades. Don't let fear of judgment stop you from living your life. Something in Cashin's posture relaxed. You really think the guard will accept this? I think the guard respects both of you enough to give you the benefit of the doubt, Mira said. And I think anyone with eyes has seen how you look at each other and is more surprised it took this long than that it's happening at all. She moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. Sarah's quarters are right next to mine. The walls are thin. Whatever you two do or don't do, I don't need to hear it. Clear. I felt my face heat. Clear. Good. She smiled slightly. I'm happy for you both. Truly. It's about damn time. Then she was gone, leaving us alone with the knowledge that our secret was out. Well, I said after a moment. That went better than expected. Myra's not the whole guard, Cashin said, but he looked less tense than before. The commanders might have different opinions. Then let's find out. I took his hand. Tonight, call a guard meeting, tell everyone the truth, and let them react however they're going to react. You're sure? I'm sure. I squeezed his hand. We've hidden long enough. Time to face whatever comes. An hour later, the entire Nightshade Guard assembled in the Great Hall. 37 warriors, all looking curious about why they'd been summoned so late. Cashin stood at the front, and I stood beside him. Not behind him like a subordinate, but next to him as an equal. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Thank you for gathering on short notice, Cashin began. I have an announcement that affects guard operations, and I wanted you to hear it directly from me. He paused, and I felt his tension, his fear of their judgment. I took his hand, linking our fingers together where everyone could see. His eyes met mine briefly, and I saw gratitude there. Then he turned back to the guard. Sarah and I are in a relationship, he said clearly. A romantic relationship. It's new, but it's serious, and it's not going to change. He paused. I know this raises questions. About propriety, about command structure, about whether this affects my judgment or her independence. But I'm telling you now, this doesn't change how the guard operates. Sarah remains a full member with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. I remain alpha, and will both continue to serve with the same integrity we always have. Silence. 37 wolves staring at us, processing, judging, deciding. Then someone in the back, a grizzled warrior named Kale who'd been with the guard for 20 years, started laughing. About fucking time, he said. I had money on this happening last year. Mira, you in the pool. The tension shattered. Half the guard was laughing. The other half was congratulating us or demanding to know why Mira hadn't told them about the betting pool, and nobody, not a single warrior, looked scandalized or disapproving. Wait, I said. There was a betting pool. Started 2 years ago, Mira said cheerfully. When you turned 16 and started looking at the alpha like he'd hung the moon. Most of us figured it was only a matter of time. And nobody thought to mention this? Cashin asked, sounding both relieved and exasperated. We're not idiots, another warrior said. Everyone could see the way you looked at each other. We were just waiting for you to figure it out." The commanders approached Sage's daughter, who'd taken over her mother's role as chief healer, Marcus, the oldest warrior in the guard, and 3 others who handled various operational duties. "We support this," Marcus said simply. "You're both adults, both valuable to the guard, both clearly making each other happy. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me." The other commanders nodded agreement. "Though we should probably establish some ground rules," Sage's daughter added, "about public displays of affection during missions, about chain of command if you two disagree on tactics, about—" "We can work out the details," Cashin interrupted, and I heard the relief in his voice. "The important thing is that 3 months into our relationship, I led my first major mission, a rescue operation to extract hostages from a rogue stronghold. Cashin stayed behind, letting me command a team of 10 warriors without interference. It was terrifying. Not the mission itself. That went smoothly, textbook execution. But the knowledge that he'd trusted me enough to let go. When we returned, hostages safe and no casualties, Cashin was waiting. "Well done," he said simply, and the pride in his eyes meant more than any elaborate praise. "Thank you for trusting me," I said quietly. "Thank you for being worth trusting," he replied. That night, lying together in his quarters. Our quarters now, we'd officially decided. I felt something settle that had been restless for years. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked, giving in to this, crossing that line. "Every day," he said, and my heart clenched. Then he continued, "I regret that I waited so long, that I let fear keep us apart when we could have had this sooner." "We weren't ready sooner," I said. "I wasn't ready. I needed those 5 years to become someone strong enough to be your equal." "You were always my equal," he said. "I just needed 5 years to see it." I kissed him, soft and slow, and felt the rightness of it settle into my bones. This was what those futures I'd seen at 11 had been showing me. Not just romance, not just attraction, but partnership. Equals who challenged each other, supported each other, loved each other despite, and because of all the complications. 7 years since I'd first seen the possibility. 5 years since I'd lost my seer gift and thought those futures were gone forever. 3 months since we'd finally admitted the truth. And now, finally, we were exactly where we were supposed to be. No prophecy needed. No visions required. Just 2 people who'd chosen each other, over and over, until the choosing became inevitable. Chapter 11. The Vision Returns. It happened during a routine mission 6 months after Cashin and I had made our relationship public. We were tracking a group of rogues who'd been raiding settlements along the eastern border. Standard operation. 12 guard members, 3 days of tracking, 1 decisive confrontation. I'd done this 100 times. But as we closed in on the rogue camp, something shifted. The world flickered. For a heartbeat, I saw double. The present moment and something else layered over it. The forest as it was, and the forest as it would be. My teammates moving through the underbrush, and their future positions overlaid like ghosts. Then it was gone. I stumbled, catching myself against a tree. Mira, who was scouting beside me, immediately noticed. "You okay?" she whispered. "Fine. Just lost my footing." But it wasn't fine, because for the first time in 5 years, I'd felt it. The faintest whisper of Seer sight, trying to wake up. I pushed it aside, focused on the mission. We hit the rogue camp at dawn, fast and efficient. No casualties on our side, 3 rogues dead, the rest scattered. Clean success. But throughout the fight, I kept feeling it. That flicker at the edge of my awareness. Not full visions, just glimpses. A sense of where attacks would come from before they materialized. A knowing that went beyond normal observation. "You're distracted," Cashin said on the ride back to the fortress. He'd pulled his horse alongside mine, his amber eyes concerned. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Just tired." "Sarah." His voice carried that note that said he knew I was lying. "What happened out there?" I glanced around. The other guard members were within earshot, and this wasn't something I wanted to discuss publicly. "Later," I said quietly. "When we're alone." He didn't push, but I felt his worry bleeding through the mate bond we'd been building over the past months. That night, in our quarters, I told him everything. "It's coming back," I said, pacing because I couldn't hold still. "My seer sight. Not fully, not like before, but I felt it today. Flickers of future sight, glimpses of possibility." Cashin's expression was unreadable. "How do you feel about that?" "I don't know." I stopped pacing, turned to face him. For 5 years, I've built an identity around being normal, around being skilled but not gifted. And now, I gestured helplessly. Now it's coming back, and I don't know if I want it to. Why wouldn't you want it? He asked carefully. Because it complicated everything before, I said. Made me valuable, made me a target, made me something other than just myself. And I've liked being just myself. Being seen for my skills, my choices, my actions, not my gifts. Your gifts are part of who you are, Cashin said. They always were. But they're not all I am, I countered. That's what I learned these past 5 years. I'm more than my seer abilities. And if they come back, I stopped. What if people go back to seeing me as the seer instead of just Sarah? He stood, moved to me, took my hands. Then we remind them, constantly if necessary. You're not defined by your gifts any more than I'm defined by my alpha status. We're both more complex than single labels. You say that, but nothing, he interrupted gently. Sarah, if your seer sight is returning, that's neither good nor bad. It just is. How you use it, how you integrate it into who you've become. That's what matters. I wanted to believe him, wanted to accept that I could have both, the strength I'd built without powers and the gifts I'd been born with. But old fears die hard. Over the following weeks, the flickers became more frequent. Not full visions like I'd had as a child, but something subtler, an enhanced awareness of probability, a sense of which choices would lead where, an ability to read situations that went beyond normal observation. It was different from before, less overwhelming, more controlled, like my gift had burned out completely and was now regrowing in a new form, shaped by the person I'd become in its absence. You're adapting, Sage's daughter observed during one of my regular checkups. She was one of the few people who knew about my returning abilities. Your seer sight is rebuilding itself around your current neural pathways instead of trying to reclaim its old patterns. That's fascinating. Is it safe? I asked. Will it stabilize or could it burn out again? Impossible to say. Seer gifts that regenerate after catastrophic burnout are extremely rare. I've only found 3 documented cases in all the old texts. She set down her notes. But in those cases, the gifts always came back different. Weaker in some ways, stronger in others. More integrated with the seer's developed personality. So what does that mean for me? It means you're not going back to who you were at 11, she said. You're becoming something new. A seer who's also a warrior. Someone who understands both power and its cost. That combination could be incredibly valuable. Or incredibly dangerous, I thought but didn't say. The first time I used my returning sight intentionally, it saved Cashin's life. We were investigating reports of strange activity near the Crimson Vale border. My birth pack's territory, a place I hadn't been in 10 years. The mission should have been simple reconnaissance. But as we approached the border, my seer sight suddenly screamed warning. I saw it. A future seconds away where Cashin stepped forward, triggered a hidden trap, and took a crossbow bolt through the chest. Saw him fall, saw the blood, saw the panic in my own eyes as I tried desperately to save him. Stop! I shouted, my hand shooting out to grab his arm. He froze immediately, every warrior going on high alert. Trap, I said, pointing to where my sight showed the trigger. 3 feet ahead, crossbow rigged to fire at chest height. Marcus moved forward carefully, examined the spot I'd indicated, and swore. She's right. Damn near invisible wire. How did you? He stopped, looked at me sharply. Sarah. I met his eyes and saw understanding dawn. Your sight, he breathed. It's back. Not fully, I said. But enough. Enough to see that. Cashin was staring at me, a complex mixture of emotions crossing his face. Relief that I'd saved him. Concern for what this meant. Something else I couldn't quite read. We disarmed the trap and continued the mission, but everything had changed. The guard knew now. Knew my seer gifts were returning. Knew I was becoming something more than just a skilled warrior again. The whispers started immediately. They're calling you the reborn seer, Mira told me a week later. There are already rumors spreading to other territories. The girl who killed the Oracle Queen and lost her powers has them back. Packs are going to be interested. Packs are going to be concerned, I corrected. A seer with combat training? That's not someone most alphas want running around unsupervised. You're not unsupervised. You're guard. For now, I said quietly. But what happens when my abilities fully return? What happens when I can see futures again, can read truth, can command with seer authority? The guard signed up for a warrior. They didn't sign up for a seer. They signed up for you, Mira said firmly. Whatever form that takes. But I wasn't sure she was right. I'd seen the way some of the warriors looked at me now, with the same mixture of awe and fear I'd received as a child. Like I was becoming something other than them. Something separate. You're overthinking, Cashin said that night, finding me alone in the seer's wing. I'd been spending more time here lately, drawn to the circular training room where I'd first learned to control my gifts. I'm preparing, I corrected. If my abilities fully return, people are going to have expectations. The guard, other packs, everyone who remembers what I was capable of before. And what do you expect? He asked, moving to stand beside me. I expect to disappoint them, I admitted. Because I'm not that girl anymore, Cashin. I'm not the prodigy who could see hundreds of futures simultaneously. I'm someone who's learned to fight, to think tactically, to exist without constant future sight. And I don't want to lose that. You won't, he said with certainty. Whatever your gifts become, they're building on who you are now, not replacing it. You're not going backwards, Sarah. You're evolving. What if I evolve into something you don't recognize? The fear I'd been carrying for weeks finally voiced. What if the seer I become isn't compatible with being guard? With being us? He turned me to face him, his hands on my shoulders. Then we adapt. Together. The same way we've adapted to everything else. He paused. But Sarah, I need you to hear this. I didn't fall in love with your seer gifts. I fell in love with your courage, your stubbornness, your refusal to be defined by what others think you should be. Those things don't change whether you can see futures or not. You say that now. I say that always, he interrupted. You are not your powers. You never were. And if you end up being both an incredibly skilled warrior and a powerful seer, then you're just even more formidable. But you're still you. Still the woman I love. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to trust that my returning gifts wouldn't change everything. But I remembered too well what happened last time. Remembered being valuable primarily for my abilities. Remembered the Oracle Queen hunting me. Remembered the weight of expectations I couldn't meet. What if it all comes back? I whispered. What if I become as powerful as I was before, and it attracts attention we can't handle? Then we handle it anyway, Cashin said simply. The same way we've handled everything else. Together. Together. The word that had become our anchor. Our promise. I leaned into him, letting his presence ground me. I'm scared. I know. So am I. He held me closer. But fear doesn't have to stop us. It just means we move forward carefully. 2 months later, my seer sight returned fully. Not gradually, suddenly all at once, during a meditation session in the seer's wing. One moment I was sitting quietly, trying to sense the subtle threads of possibility. The next, the entire web of futures exploded into my awareness. I gasped, overwhelmed by the sudden influx. Hundreds of paths, thousands of choices, possible outcomes branching and rebranching in infinite complexity. But it was different from before. Instead of drowning in possibility, I found I could sort through it, could focus on relevant futures while letting irrelevant ones fade to background noise, could see clearly without being overwhelmed. 5 years of living without future sight had taught me to function in the present. Now, instead of replacing that ability, my seer gifts enhanced it. I could see both what was and what might be, could act on current information while factoring in probable outcomes, could be warrior and seer simultaneously instead of having to choose one or the other. When I opened my eyes, Cashin was standing in the doorway. He must have felt something through our bond, the moment when everything shifted. It's back, I said, and my voice was steady despite the magnitude of what had just happened. All of it, stronger than before. He moved closer slowly, like he was approaching something dangerous. How do you feel? I checked internally, assessed the power flowing through me, the futures spreading before me, the weight of sight fully restored. Complete, I said, surprised by the truth of it. Like I'm finally both halves of who I'm supposed to be. The warrior I became and the seer I was born as. Together, relief flooded his expression. You're still you. I'm still me, I confirmed. Just more. He pulled me into his arms, and I felt his fear dissolving. He'd been terrified that my returning gifts would change me fundamentally, would take away the woman he'd fallen in love with and replace her with something other. But I wasn't other. I was just whole. What do we do now? He asked. I sorted through futures, seeing the paths spreading out before us. Some led to announcing my returned abilities, others to keeping them secret, others to leaving the guard entirely and finding new purposes. But one path shone brighter than the others. More probable, more right, more aligned with who I'd become. Now, I said, pulling back to meet his eyes, we do what we've always done. We serve the guard. We protect those who can't protect themselves. We build something worth believing in. With you as a fully manifested seer, he said. That changes things. Does it? I asked. I'm still Sarah. Still a guard member. Still your partner. The gifts are just tools. What matters is how I choose to use them. And how do you choose to use them? I smiled. Carefully. Wisely. And only when absolutely necessary. Because I learned something these past 5 years. Power without restraint is dangerous. Power with wisdom is revolutionary. He kissed me, fierce and proud. You're going to be extraordinary. I already am, I said with a confidence I'd earned through 7 years of hard work and sacrifice. The Seer's sight just makes me more so. Word spread quickly. Within a week, every pack within 200 miles knew. The reborn Seer's gifts had fully returned. The girl who'd killed the Oracle Queen, lost her powers, and rebuilt herself as a warrior was now both. Requests started pouring in. Packs wanting to hire me as a consultant. Alphas requesting meetings. Even a few marriage proposals from wolves who'd clearly never met me and thought a powerful seer was worth courting. You're in demand, Mira said dryly, sorting through the latest batch of letters. 3 more proposals today. One from a very persistent alpha in the Northern Territories who says he'll make you his Luna if you'll just meet him once. Tell him I'm already spoken for, I said, not looking up from the training dummy I was systematically destroying. Even with my gifts returned, I still trained daily. Still maintained my warrior skills. Because Seer's sight didn't replace compatibility, it enhanced it. Already did. He wrote back saying he'd challenge Cashin for you. That got my attention. He what? Don't worry. Cashin wrote back accepting the challenge. I give the Northern Alpha about 30 seconds before he realizes he made a terrible mistake. I laughed despite myself. This is going to be our life now, isn't it? People seeing me as a prize to be won instead of a person with agency. Probably, Mira agreed. Welcome to being both powerful and female. It's exhausting. But not everyone saw me as a prize. Some saw me as a threat. The assassination attempt came 3 months after my gifts returned. I'd been expecting it. My seer sight had shown me the possibility for weeks. But seeing the future didn't always mean being able to prevent it. Sometimes, the best you could do was prepare. They came at night. 5 assassins, well-trained, well-equipped, sent by someone who wanted me dead before I became too powerful. I was alone when they struck. Cashin was leading a mission in the Western Territories. They'd timed it perfectly, or thought they had. What they didn't account for was that I'd seen them coming. Had been preparing for 3 weeks. Had set traps, established escape routes, and positioned guard members where they'd be most useful. The fight was brutal but short. 2 assassins dead, 3 captured, and me standing over them with barely a scratch. Who sent you? I demanded, my sword at the lead assassin's throat. He smiled, blood on his teeth. Someone who remembers what the last powerful seer became. Someone who won't let history repeat. The Oracle Queen started as a hero too, he said. Before power corrupted her. Before she became the monster. You're walking the same path, girl. And someone's smart enough to stop you before you get there. I could have killed him. Should have, maybe. But instead, I handed him over to the guard commanders. Find out who hired them, I said. And make it clear. I'm not interested in becoming another Oracle Queen. But I'm also not afraid of defending myself. When Cashin returned and heard what happened, he was furious. At the assassins, at whoever hired them, at himself for not being there. I should have. You should have nothing, I interrupted. You were doing your job. I was doing mine. And I handled it. You could have been killed. I could be killed on any mission, I pointed out. This is just the first time someone tried because of what I am instead of what I'm doing. It won't be the last, he said grimly. Not now that your abilities are known. You're too valuable, too dangerous. Someone will always see you as either a prize or a threat. Then they'll be disappointed, I said. Because I'm neither. I'm just someone trying to do good work with the gifts I've been given. And anyone who tries to claim me, control me, or kill me will learn very quickly that I don't accept those options. He pulled me close, his worry bleeding through our bond. I can't lose you, Sarah. Not now. Not after everything. You won't, I promised. I can see futures, remember? I know which paths lead to disaster. I'm choosing different ones. Can you see our future? He asked quietly. Where we end up? I sorted through possibilities, looking specifically for paths involving us. What I saw made me smile. I see us together for a very long time, I said. I see us building something important, creating something lasting. And I stopped, surprised by what the future showed. What? Nothing, I said, filing that particular vision away for later. Some futures weren't meant to be revealed until their time. Just that we're going to be okay. Better than okay. Whatever comes, we handle it together. Together, he echoed, making it a vow. Chapter 12, The Proposal. 1 year after my Seer gifts fully returned, Cashin proposed. Not with flowers and romance, and a carefully orchestrated moment. That wasn't who we were. Instead, it happened during a mission debriefing at 3 a.m, both of us exhausted and covered in mud from tracking rogues through a swamp. We should formalize this, he said, not looking up from his mission report. Formalize what? I asked, too tired to parse his meaning. Us. Our partnership. He set down his pen, finally met my eyes. We should mate bond. Officially. I stared at him. Did you just propose to me in the middle of paperwork? Is that not appropriate? He actually looked uncertain. I thought. We've been together for over a year. We work well together. We love each other. Formalizing it makes strategic sense. Strategic sense, I repeated flatly. An emotional sense, he added quickly. Obviously emotional sense. I want to spend my life with you, Sarah. I want everyone to know you're mine, and I'm yours. I want. He stopped, seeming to realize his approach might have been lacking. I'm doing this badly, aren't I? I started laughing. Couldn't help it. Here was the alpha of the Nightshade Guard, one of the most powerful wolves in the territory, proposing marriage like it was a tactical decision. Yes, I said when I could breathe again. You're doing this terribly, but also perfectly, because that's exactly who you are. I moved around the table, sat in his lap despite the mud covering us both. Yes, I'll mate bond with you. Yes, I'll formalize our partnership. Yes to all of it. Relief flooded his face. Really? Even though I proposed during paperwork. Especially because you proposed during paperwork, I said. Anyone can do roses and moonlight. But proposing at 3 a.m. while covered in swamp mud? That's authentic. He kissed me, and I tasted his smile against my lips. I love you, Sarah Thorne. I love you too, Cashin Silvermane. Even when you're terrible at romance. I'll make it up to you, he promised. You'd better. The mate bonding ceremony happened 2 months later under the full moon. Not in packed territory or formal halls, but in the Vale of Remembrance, the place where we'd first acknowledged the possibility of us. The entire Nightshade Guard attended, along with representatives from allied packs. It was smaller than most formal ceremonies, maybe 50 wolves total, but that made it more intimate, more meaningful. Mira performed the ceremony as Beta and Cashin's oldest friend. She grumbled about the responsibility, but secretly been thrilled. We gather under the full moon to witness the bonding of Cashin Silvermane and Seraphina Thorne, she began, her voice carrying across the valley. 2 wolves who have chosen each other, not through fate or tradition, but through conscious decision and earned trust. I stood facing Cashin, wearing simple robes of white and silver, Seer colors. He wore black and silver, guard colors. Our hands were bound together with a silver cord, the traditional symbol of connection. Cashin, Mira continued, do you swear to stand beside Seraphina as her equal? To support her in her choices, challenge her when wisdom demands, and love her through all the complications that partnership brings? I do, Cashin said, his amber eyes locked on mine. I swear it on my wolf, my honor, and my life. Seraphina, do you swear to stand beside Cashin as his equal? To support him in his choices, challenge him when wisdom demands, and love him through all the complications that partnership brings? I do, I said, meaning it with every fiber of my being. I swear it on my wolf, my honor, and my life. Then by the power granted to me as witness and Beta, I declare you bonded, Mira said. Mates in the eyes of the pack and the moon goddess. You may seal the bond. Cashin pulled me close and kissed me, and I felt it. The mate bond we'd been building for over a year suddenly completing, snapping into place with a rightness that stole my breath. I could feel his emotions as clearly as my own, could sense his wolf recognizing mine, could feel the connection settling into my bones like it had always been meant to be there. When we finally broke apart, the assembled wolves were howling, joy and celebration echoing through the valley. "Told you I'd make it up to you," Cashin murmured against my ear. "You did good," I admitted. "This is perfect. It gets better." He pulled me toward the lake where we'd carved our names years ago. Look, someone, probably Cashin, had added new carvings to the tree. Not just our names now, but a symbol. 2 trees intertwined, their branches forming a unified canopy. The symbol of mate bonding. "When did you?" "Yesterday, while you were helping Mira set up." He wrapped his arms around me from behind. I wanted something permanent, something that would last. I leaned back against him, feeling the mate bond hum between us, feeling more complete than I'd ever felt. "I love you. So much it scares me sometimes." Good scared or bad scared? Good scared. The kind that means I have something worth losing. I turned in his arms. "But I'm not going to lose you. I've seen the futures. We have decades together." "Only decades," he teased. "Centuries if you're lucky." The celebration continued late into the night. Food, drink, stories shared around fires. The guard relaxed and joyful, celebrating not just a mating but the idea that 2 of their own had found happiness despite everything. I found myself talking with Marcus, the oldest warrior, who'd pulled me aside as the moon reached its zenith. "Your mother would be proud," he said simply. "Elena was one of the finest wolves I knew, and you've become everything she hoped you would be." "You knew my mother?" I asked, surprised. "Met her once years ago, before Crimson Vale exiled you both. She was treating injured wolves from a border conflict." He smiled at the memory. "She told me about you. Said she had a daughter who was going to change the world. I thought it was just maternal pride. Turns out she was right." "I'm not changing the world," I protested. "I'm just trying to survive it." "That's how world-changing starts," Marcus said. "One person surviving impossible odds. Inspiring others to do the same. Building something better from the ruins of what came before." He paused. "The Oracle Queen broke the world for seers. Made us afraid of our own gifts. But you're showing a different path. Proving we can be both powerful and good. That's revolutionary, whether you intend it or not." His words stayed with me through the rest of the celebration. Was that what I was doing? Not just surviving, but creating a template for how seers could exist in the modern world. Later, when Cashin and I finally escaped to the tent that had been prepared for us, our first night as officially bonded mates, I mentioned Marcus's words. "He's not wrong," Cashin said, pulling me down beside him on the furs. "You are changing things. Just by existing. By refusing to be what people expect." "I'm not trying to be revolutionary," I said. "I'm just trying to be me. That's exactly what makes it revolutionary." He traced patterns on my arm, the mate bond making even simple touches feel significant. "The Oracle Queen tried to transcend what she was. You've transcended by integrating everything you are, seer, warrior, survivor partner. That's the difference between corruption and evolution." "Deep thoughts for our wedding night," I teased. "Would you prefer shallow ones?" "I'd prefer you stop talking and kiss your wife." "Wife?" He tested the word. "I like that." "Me too. Now less talking." He laughed and pulled me closer, and we spent our first night as bonded mates doing what bonded mates do. Talking, touching, exploring the new depths of connection the mate bond provided. It was perfect. Imperfect in its perfection, messy and real, and entirely us. 6 months after our bonding, I discovered I was pregnant. The realization came during a mission, a sudden wave of nausea, a strange sensitivity to smells, and then my seer sight showing me a future I hadn't been looking for. A child with Cashin's silver hair and my red eyes. I was 20 years old, bonded for half a year, and about to become a mother. The terror was immediate and overwhelming. "You're distracted," Mira observed as we tracked a group of rogues through dense forest. "That's the 3rd time you've lost the trail." "I'm fine," I said automatically. "You're lying," she corrected. "What's wrong?" I glanced around. We were scouting ahead of the main group. Just the 2 of us. If I was going to tell anyone first, it should be her. "I'm pregnant," I whispered. Mira stopped walking. "You're..." She turned to look at me, her expression cycling through shock, concern, and finally joy. "Congratulations." "I don't know if congratulations are appropriate," I admitted. "I'm 20. I'm a guard member. I hunt rogues and track criminals and fight things that could easily kill me. How am I supposed to? I gestured helplessly. How do I do this? The same way you've done everything else, Mira said practically. One day at a time, figuring it out as you go. She paused. Does Cashin know? Not yet. I just realized during this mission. I haven't. I stopped. He's going to want me to stop field work. To stay safe. And I can't. My voice broke. I can't stop being who I am just because I'm pregnant. You won't have to, Mira said firmly. Women have been having children and doing dangerous work since the beginning of time. Yes, you'll need to adjust. Yes, Cashin will worry. But you're not fragile, Sarah. Pregnancy doesn't erase everything you've built. Tell him that, I said with a weak laugh. I will if I need to, Mira promised. But first, you need to tell him. Tonight, when we get back. Before he hears it from someone else or figures it out himself. She was right. Cashin deserved to know immediately. That night, after we'd returned to the fortress and debriefed the mission, I found him in our quarters. We need to talk, I said, and he immediately looked concerned. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Exactly. It's just... I took a breath. I'm pregnant. He froze. For a long moment, he didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at me like he was trying to process words in a foreign language. Then a smile broke across his face, genuine, unguarded, filled with wonder. You're pregnant. You're happy? I asked, surprised by his reaction. He moved to me, pulled me into his arms. I'm terrified and thrilled and completely unprepared. But yes, I'm happy. He pulled back to look at me. Are you? I don't know, I admitted. I'm scared. I'm 20 years old, Cashin. I don't know how to be a mother. Don't know how to balance that with being guard. Don't know. I stopped, overwhelmed. We'll figure it out, he said, echoing Myra's words. Together. The same way we figure out everything else. You're going to want me to stop field work, I said. To stay safe. I'm going to want you to be careful, he corrected. But no, I'm not going to ask you to stop being who you are. That wouldn't be fair to either of us. He paused. Though I will probably worry excessively and drive you crazy with overprotectiveness. I can live with that, I said, feeling some of the terror ease. As long as you remember I'm still me. Still capable. Still the woman who killed the Oracle Queen and survived everything the world threw at her, he finished. I know. I married you knowing exactly who you are. A child doesn't change that. It changes everything, I whispered. Yes, he agreed. But not the parts that matter. Not who we are to each other. Not what we've built. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to trust that becoming a mother wouldn't erase the warrior, the seer, the person I'd fought so hard to become. But my seer sight showed me futures, dozens of them, where everything changed. Where I was too tired, too overwhelmed, too focused on the child to be effective in the field. Where I became someone I didn't recognize. What do you see? Cashin asked, reading my expression. In the futures? Complications, I admitted. Challenges. Moments where I have to choose between being a mother and being guard. And I don't. My voice caught. I don't know how to make those choices. Then we'll make them together, he said firmly. You're not alone in this, Sarah. You've never been alone. Not since you fell out of that tree 10 years ago. 10 years. Had it really been that long? 10 years since I'd been a terrified 7-year-old with nothing but a compass and hope. 10 years of growth, of loss, of becoming someone stronger than I'd ever imagined possible. And now I was about to create new life. To bring someone into this world who would depend on me completely. The terror was real. But so was the wonder. We're going to be parents, I said, testing the words. We're going to be parents, Cashin confirmed, pulling me close. And we're going to be good at it. Because we're good at everything we do together. I laughed despite my fear. That's very optimistic. That's very true, he corrected. We've survived everything the world has thrown at us. We can survive this too. This is different, I pointed out. This is creating and protecting a life, not just surviving threats. Then it's a good thing you're excellent at protection, he said. And even better at loving fiercely. He was right. Whatever challenges came, and my seer sight showed me there would be many, we'd face them together. The same way we'd faced everything else. Chapter 13, Balance. Pregnancy changed everything and nothing simultaneously. My body changed, grew round with life, moved differently, tired more easily. But my skills remained sharp. My seer sight stayed active. My determination to remain useful never wavered. The guard adapted around me. Missions were adjusted, responsibilities shifted, but I wasn't sidelined. Cashin kept his promise. He worried excessively but didn't try to cage me. "You're glowing," Mira said one afternoon, finding me in the training yard. I was 6 months along and still sparring, though with strict rules about contact. "I'm sweating," I corrected, blocking a practice strike from a younger warrior. "There's a difference." "You're also terrifying," the warrior said, disengaging. "You're pregnant and still faster than me. How is that fair?" "Life isn't fair," I said cheerfully. Again. We continued training, and I felt the satisfaction of maintaining my edge. Yes, my balance was different. Yes, I couldn't move exactly as I had before. But adaptation was survival, and I'd been surviving since I was 7 years old. That evening, Cashin found me reviewing mission reports in our quarters. "You should be resting," he said, though his tone suggested he knew arguing was pointless. "I'll rest when I'm dead," I said without looking up. "This intelligence on the eastern border needs analysis, and I'm the best person to." "Sarah." He took the reports from my hands, set them aside, and pulled me to my feet. "Dance with me." "What?" "Dance with me," he repeated, already moving us in a slow circle. "No reports, no missions, no threats. Just us." "We don't dance," I protested, even as I let him lead. "We've never danced." "Then it's about time we started." He rested his forehead against mine. "You've been pushing yourself too hard. Training every day, taking missions until last month, analyzing intelligence reports when you should be sleeping. You're trying to prove you can do everything you did before." "Because I can," I said defensively. "I know you can," he agreed. "But should you? Sarah, you're growing a life inside you. That takes energy, takes resources. It's okay to slow down." "If I slow down, people will think pregnancy made me weak," I argued. "Will think I'm less capable." "Then let them think wrong things," he interrupted gently. "You don't have to prove yourself to anyone, especially not now. But I did have to prove myself, because I'd spent years building a reputation as more than just the seer. I was a warrior, a tactician, a valued guard member, and I couldn't let pregnancy erase that. I see the futures," I said quietly. "I see paths where I step back, where I focus on being a mother, and I lose everything else. Lose the respect I've earned, lose my edge, lose myself in the role everyone expects me to fill. And I see the present," Cashin countered, "where you're exhausted, where you're pushing yourself beyond safe limits, where you're so determined not to be defined by pregnancy that you're defining yourself against it instead." His words hit harder than they should have, because he was right. I'd been so focused on not letting pregnancy change me that I'd made it the center of everything anyway. "I don't know how to balance," I admitted. "How to be both, mother and warrior, pregnant and capable, soft and strong." "You don't have to know," he said. "You just have to be willing to learn, to adjust, to accept that some things will change, and that's not failure." "But what if I change too much?" The fear I'd been carrying for months finally voiced. "What if becoming a mother means I stop being the person you fell in love with?" He stopped dancing, cupped my face in his hands. "Sarah, I fell in love with someone who survives impossible odds and adapts to every challenge. Someone who refuses to be limited by others' expectations. Someone who grows and changes and becomes more every year." He smiled. "Becoming a mother is just another evolution. You won't be less. You'll be more. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's terrifying and complicated and messy. But that's never stopped you before." He kissed me softly. "Trust yourself, Sarah. Trust that you can be both warrior and mother. Trust that adding roles doesn't mean losing yourself." I wanted to believe him. Wanted to trust that I could integrate this new identity without sacrificing the ones I'd fought for. My seer sight showed me futures. Hundreds of them, all branching from this moment. In some, I found balance. In others, I lost myself to duty or motherhood or fear. The key was choosing carefully, being intentional about which path to walk. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll try. I'll stop pushing so hard, stop trying to prove I haven't changed. I'll let this be what it is, a transformation, not a loss." "Thank you," Cashin said, relief clear in his voice. "And Sarah, whatever you become, however you change, I'll love every version of you." Our daughter was born on a night when the moon was full and the stars were impossibly bright. Labor was brutal, hours of pain that even my seer sight couldn't prepare me for. But when I finally held her, when I saw her tiny face and shock of silver hair, Everything else fell away. She's perfect, Cashin breathed, staring at our daughter with wonder. She's absolutely perfect. She has your hair, I said, my voice rough from screaming. And my eyes. Our daughter opened those eyes, red as garnets, clear and aware in a way newborns shouldn't be, and looked directly at me. And I felt it. A spark of power, nascent but undeniable. She's Seer-born, I whispered. I can feel it. Cashin's expression cycled through emotions too complex to name. Like you. Like me, I confirmed. But hopefully with a better childhood. We named her Arya, a name that meant air and light and hope. She was all three. The first few weeks were chaos. Sleepless nights, constant feedings, the terror of being responsible for something so small and fragile. I'd fought rogues and killed the Oracle Queen without flinching, but a 7-pound baby reduced me to panic. She won't stop crying, I said desperately one night, pacing our quarters with Arya screaming in my arms. I've fed her, changed her, held her. I don't know what she needs. Cashin took her gently, and somehow, impossibly, she quieted almost immediately. How did you? Beginner's luck, he said, but he looked as surprised as I felt. Over the following months, we found our rhythm. Mira helped, teaching me things about infant care I'd never learned. Sage's daughter provided medical support. The entire guard pitched in, taking turns entertaining Arya while Cashin and I caught scattered hours of sleep. And slowly, I discovered that Cashin had been right. Adding mother to my list of roles didn't erase warrior or seer. It just made me more complex, more nuanced, more capable of understanding what truly mattered. When Arya was 6 months old, I returned to active duty. Not full missions. I wasn't ready for that yet, and Arya needed me home regularly. But training, tactical planning, shorter patrols that kept my skills sharp without taking me away for days. Welcome back, Mira said my first day in the training yard. We missed you. I missed this, I admitted, stretching muscles that had gone soft. As much as I love Arya, I was going insane being limited to the fortress. Most new mothers are, Mira said. The ones who pretend otherwise are lying. You're allowed to love your child and still need other challenges. It felt good to move, to fight, to use skills I'd feared losing. My body was different, softer in places marked by pregnancy, but still strong, still capable. And my seer sight had evolved again. Now when I looked at futures, I automatically factored in Arya. Saw not just my paths, but how they affected her. It was exhausting but also grounding. Every choice mattered more when someone else's future depended on it. You're different, one of the younger warriors observed during sparring. Fiercer somehow. Motherhood does that, I said, disarming him with a move he didn't see coming. Makes you realize what you're protecting. Makes you fight harder. That night, I told Cashin what the warrior had said. You are fiercer, he agreed, but also gentler, more patient. Arya's changed you in all the best ways. I was terrified she'd change me in all the worst ways, I admitted. That I'd lose myself to being a mother. Instead you integrated it, he said. Made it part of who you are instead of letting it define you. That's the difference between adding roles and being consumed by them. I looked at Arya, sleeping peacefully in her crib, oblivious to the philosophical discussions happening around her. She was perfect. Impossible. Ours. Thank you, I said to Cashin. For what? For not letting me spiral. For insisting I could be both. For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. I leaned against him. For giving me her. We gave each other her, he corrected. She's ours. Together. Like everything else. Together. The word that had become our foundation. When Arya was 1 year old, she had her first vision. We were in the gardens, and she suddenly went very still. Her red eyes glazed over, unfocused, seeing something beyond the present moment. Cashin, I called, trying to keep my voice calm despite the fear. She's. He was there in seconds, kneeling beside us. What's happening? Vision, I said. Her first one. I remember what it feels like. The world falling away, future's overwhelming present. We waited, helpless, as our daughter experienced what I'd experienced my entire childhood. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably seconds, her eyes cleared. Mama, she said, one of her few words, and pointed to the sky. Birds. I looked up. Nothing. But I knew what she'd seen. What would come? 5 minutes later, a flock of birds flew overhead, exactly as Arya had predicted. She's time sight dominant, I said quietly. Like me. Cashin's expression was complicated. She's so young. Seer gifts manifest early, I reminded him. I was having visions by age 3. At least with Arya, we know what to expect. We can teach her, guide her, help her integrate the power instead of being overwhelmed by it. You'll teach her, he said. You're the only one who can. The responsibility settled on my shoulders like a familiar weight. I was mother and mentor now, teacher and protector. Someone who would ensure my daughter never felt cursed for being different. We'll teach her, I corrected. Together. He smiled, pulling us both close. Together. Over the next year, I balanced motherhood, guard duties, and teaching Arya to control her emerging gifts. It was exhausting, overwhelming, impossible. It was also the most meaningful work I'd ever done. Teaching my daughter that her powers were gifts, not curses. That being different was strength, not weakness. That she could be both powerful and good, both seer and child, both extraordinary and normal. She's lucky to have you, Mira said one afternoon, watching me guide Arya through a simple meditation exercise. I'm lucky to have her, I corrected. She's teaching me as much as I'm teaching her. Showing me that power with proper guidance doesn't have to be terrifying. That seers raised right don't become oracle queens. You're creating a new template, Mira observed, for how seer children can grow up, for how gifts can be integrated healthily instead of feared. That's too much pressure, I protested. Maybe, Mira agreed, but it's also reality. You're the first powerful seer in a generation who survived to adulthood, maintained your sanity, and raised a child. That matters. People are watching. I looked at Arya, happily playing with the flowers she'd just predicted would bloom. She was 2 years old and already more powerful than most adult seers. But she was also just a child. Happy, curious, loved. That was the difference. That was what would prevent her from becoming corrupted. Not controlling her power, but surrounding it with love, guidance, and healthy boundaries. Then let them watch, I said finally. Let them see that seers don't have to be monsters or martyrs. We can just be people, complicated, powerful, but fundamentally human. Or wolf, Mira corrected with a smile. Or wolf, I agreed. Chapter 14. The Crimson Vale Reckoning. When Arya was 3 years old, Crimson Vale Pack requested a meeting. The message came through official channels. A formal request from their alpha to meet with the seer known as Seraphina Thorn, formerly of Crimson Vale, on matters of pack reconciliation and restitution. I read the letter 3 times, each reading making my blood colder. They want to reconcile, I said to Cashin that evening, my voice flat. The pack that exiled me and my mother 16 years ago wants to make amends. What do you want to do? He asked carefully. Ignore it, I said immediately. Burn the letter. Pretend Crimson Vale doesn't exist. I paused. But I can't, can I? Not if they're reaching out officially. Not if they're acknowledging what they did. You don't owe them anything, Cashin said firmly. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, not even your time. What they did to you, to your mother, was unforgivable. But Arya will grow up knowing I came from somewhere, I said quietly. Knowing there's a pack that cast me out. And someday she'll ask why I never gave them a chance to apologize. Why I held on to anger instead of trying for closure. Closure doesn't require forgiving them. No, I agreed. But it might require facing them. Showing them what I became. What they threw away. I looked at him. I want to go. Not to reconcile. To make them understand exactly what they lost. Cashin studied me for a long moment. Then we'll go together. You, me, Mira, and enough warriors to make it clear this isn't a supplicant returning home. This is a foreign power granting an audience. I smiled despite the knot in my stomach. I like that. 2 weeks later, we approached Crimson Vale territory for the first time in 16 years. The borders looked the same, marked stones, scent markers, the familiar forest I'd played in as a small child. But everything felt different. Smaller, less significant. I'd grown. This place hadn't. Alpha Ronin himself met us at the border. He was older now, his dark hair streaked with gray, his face lined with age. But I recognized him immediately. The wolf who'd pronounced me cursed, who'd sentenced my mother and me to exile. Seraphina Thorn, he said, and I heard uncertainty in his voice. Thank you for coming. Alpha Ronin, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. You requested this meeting. I'm here to listen. He flinched slightly at my formal tone. Will you come to Packlands? We've prepared. No, I interrupted. We'll speak here, on neutral ground. I have no interest in entering territory that exiled me. Of course. Of course. He gestured to a clearing just beyond the border markers. If you'll follow me. We walked in tense silence. Cashin stayed at my right, Mira at my left, both radiating protective menace. Behind us, 10 guard warriors moved with military precision. We were a statement, a show of power. The clearing was set up like a formal negotiation. Logs arranged as seats, a fire burning despite the warm day, refreshments laid out that no one would touch. I'll be direct, Ronan said once we were seated. Crimson Vale Pack wishes to formally apologize for the exile of you and your mother 16 years ago. We acknowledge that our judgment was wrong, our actions were cruel, and the consequences to your family were devastating. Go on, I said, my voice giving nothing away. We've learned much in the years since. Learned that blood moon births aren't curses. Learned that seer gifts manifest unpredictably. Learned that. He stopped, seemed to struggle. Learned that we killed one of our finest members and exiled a child who could have brought glory to our pack. Glory, I repeated, and I heard the edge in my voice. That's what this is about. Not guilt over destroying a 7-year-old's life, but regret over losing a valuable asset. That's not, Ronan tried. It is exactly that, I interrupted. You want to apologize now because I became powerful, because I killed the Oracle Queen, because I'm known throughout the territories as a seer and warrior. But if I'd died in that marsh, which is what you intended, you'd feel no guilt at all. The silence that followed was absolute. You're not wrong, Ronan said finally, and the admission surprised me. If you'd died as we expected, we'd have convinced ourselves we were right, that you were cursed, that we made the hard but necessary choice. He met my eyes. But you didn't die. You survived. And your survival has forced us to confront what we did. Not just to you, but to your mother, to ourselves. My mother died because of you, I said, my voice hard. That wound she had when she died, it wouldn't heal because the stress of exile, of constant danger, of watching her child suffer weakened her. You may not have held the blade, but you killed her as surely as if you had. I know, Ronan said quietly. I know, and I will carry that guilt until I die. Elena Thorne was, his voice broke. She was one of the best of us. And we destroyed her because we were afraid of what we didn't understand. Fear isn't an excuse, I said flatly. No, it's not. He pulled out a leather-bound document, offered it across the fire. This is a formal declaration from Crimson Vale Pack. We acknowledge our crimes against you and your mother. We void the exile retroactively. We offer full restitution, territory, resources, a place in the pack if you want it. And we request your forgiveness, though we know we don't deserve it. I took the document, but didn't open it. What do you actually want, Ronan? Why now, after 16 years of silence? He was quiet for a long moment. Because we have children showing seer gifts. 3 in the last 5 years. And we don't know how to train them, how to help them, how to prevent them from becoming what we feared you'd become. He looked at me directly. We need your help. Need someone who understands what these children are experiencing. And we thought, hoped, that if we acknowledged our wrongs, made proper restitution, you might be willing to teach them. There it was. The real reason. Not guilt. Not remorse. Need. So you want me to train the seer pups you were willing to exile? I said slowly. Want me to give them what you denied me, guidance, support, understanding. And in exchange, you're offering me what? The pack status you stole from me 16 years ago. We're offering whatever you want, Ronan said. Name your price. Territory, resources, formal alliance with the Nightshade Guard. Anything within our power to give. I looked at Cashin. He'd been silent through all of this, but I felt his opinion through our mate bond. This was my choice. He'd support whatever I decided. I need to think, I said finally. This isn't a decision I'm making today. Of course. Take whatever time you need. Ronan stood, and his warriors stood with him. But Seraphina? Those children, they're afraid. They're hearing the same whispers you must have heard. That they're cursed, dangerous, wrong. And I don't, his voice caught. I don't want them to suffer what you suffered. What I caused you to suffer. Then you should have thought of that before you made being different a death sentence, I said coldly. I stood, and the guard stood with me. We left without another word, leaving Ronan and his packmates standing in that clearing with their apologies and their guilt and their needs. What are you going to do? Mira asked on the ride back to the... I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to tell them to suffer the consequences of their choices. Let those seer pups grow up afraid and untrained the way I did. But, Cashin prompted. But they're children, I said. Innocent children who don't deserve to be punished for their pack's past mistakes. I looked down at the document still clutched in my hands. And I could help them. Could give them what I never had. Training from someone who understands. Support from someone who's walked their path. You don't owe them that, Cashin said. I don't owe Crimson Vale anything, I agreed. But maybe I owe it to those children. To myself, even. To prove that seers with proper guidance become assets, not threats. You'd be doing exactly what Ronan wants, Mira pointed out. Giving him what he asked for. I'd be doing what's right, I corrected. There's a difference. He wants me to help because it benefits Crimson Vale. I'd help because it benefits children who are scared and alone. I paused. And because maybe it's time to let go of the anger. Not forgive. I'll never forgive what they did to my mother. But let go of the poison. Stop letting their choices define my present. Cashin was quiet for a long moment. Whatever you decide, I support you. But Sarah, you don't have to be the bigger person. You don't have to help people who hurt you just because you can. I know, I said. But maybe I want to. Maybe this is how I transform pain into purpose. How I ensure no other seer child experiences what I experienced. That night, I sat in the seer's wing with the Crimson Vale document spread before me. The formal language outlined everything Ronan had promised: restitution, apologies, offers of alliance. But none of it mattered as much as the final section, a list of 3 names. 3 seer children currently in Crimson Vale Pack, ages ranging from 4 to 9. 3 pups who were probably hearing whispers about being cursed right now. I thought about Arya, about how different her childhood was from mine. She'd never been called cursed, never been made to feel wrong for her gifts. She was growing up knowing she was loved, valuable, extraordinary in the best possible way. These children deserved the same. But could I give them that while working with the pack that had destroyed my mother? My seer sight showed me futures, dozens of them branching from this choice. In some, I refused and Crimson Vale struggled with their seer pups alone. In others, I helped and created a new template for seer training that spread to other packs. And in a few, my work with Crimson Vale children led to systematic changes in how all packs treated seer-born pups. That last set of futures glowed brightest. Most probable. Most impactful. You're going to do it, Cashin said from the doorway. I can see it on your face. I'm going to help the children, I corrected. I'm not doing it for Crimson Vale. I'm doing it for 3 scared pups who deserve better than the pack they were born into. He moved to sit beside me. How? I'll travel there once a month. Train the seer children. Teach them control. Teach them that their gifts are valuable. Teach them they're not cursed. I looked at him. But I'm not joining the pack. I'm not pretending 16 years of exile didn't happen. I'm not forgiving Ronan. I'm just helping children who need help. And taking their money, Mira said, appearing in the doorway. She'd clearly been eavesdropping. Make them pay, Sarah. Resources, territory, formal alliance. Take everything they're offering. Not because you need it, but because they need to understand there are consequences. She was right. Forgiveness might be free, but help had a price. Draft the terms, I told her. I want full restitution paid to a fund for seer children across all territories. I want formal recognition from Crimson Vale that their exile was unjust. I want a public apology, not just to me, but on record for all packs to see. And I want authority over how their seer children are trained. No interference, no oversight, complete autonomy. That's going to hurt their pride, Mira observed. Good, I said. Let it hurt. Let them feel a fraction of what my mother felt watching me suffer because of their choices. Cashin squeezed my hand. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to make them pay. That doesn't make you petty. It makes you honest. I'm angry, I admitted. Furious, even after all these years. But I struggled for the words. I'm also tired of carrying it. Tired of letting them occupy space in my head. This is how I take that space back. By turning their wrong into something right. 2 months later, I walked back into Crimson Vale territory for the first time as a teacher, not in exile. The 3 seer children were waiting. Lila, 9 years old with future sight. Cade, 7, with empathic abilities. And tiny Finn, 4, whose gifts hadn't fully manifested yet. They looked at me with the same mixture of fear, and hope I remembered feeling as a child. Like I was either their salvation or just another adult who would hurt them. "My name is Seraphina," I said, crouching to their level. "I'm a seer like you, and I'm here to teach you that being seer isn't a curse. It's a gift. A complicated, difficult, wonderful gift." "They say we're wrong," Lila whispered. "That we're dangerous." "They said that about me too," I told her. "When I was your age. They were wrong then, and they're wrong now. You're not dangerous, you're powerful. There's a difference." Over the following months, I traveled to Crimson Vale regularly, taught the children meditation, control, how to sort through visions without being overwhelmed, taught them they were valuable beyond their gifts, taught them everything I'd wished someone had taught me. And slowly, I watched them transform from scared, guilty children into confident young seers. "You're changing them," Ronan said after one session. "Not just teaching them control, changing how they see themselves." "That's the point," I said. "Seers with shame become problems. Seers with confidence become leaders." "Thank you," he said quietly. "I know you're not doing this for us, but thank you." "Don't thank me," I said. "Thank the children for being brave enough to learn. Thank your pack for finally recognizing that different doesn't mean wrong." I paused. "And remember this moment the next time you're tempted to fear what you don't understand." As I left Crimson Vale that day, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not forgiveness. I still hadn't forgiven them for what they'd done to my mother. Maybe I never would. But acceptance. Understanding that holding on to rage was exhausting. That I could acknowledge the hurt without letting it define me. I was 23 years old. I had a mate who loved me, a daughter who adored me, work that mattered, and purpose beyond survival. Crimson Vale had tried to destroy me 16 years ago. They'd failed. And now I was using their guilt to build something better. A future where no seer child had to suffer what I'd suffered. That felt like victory. Not over them, but over the fear and shame they'd tried to instill in me. I'd survived. I'd thrived. I'd become exactly what my mother had hoped I would be. That was the best revenge possible. Chapter 15, Legacy. 5 years after I began training the Crimson Vale seer children, everything changed again. It started with a letter from an alpha I didn't know, Meridian Pack, from the far northern territories. They'd heard about my work with seer children and wanted to know if I'd consider expanding my teaching to other packs. "There are seer pups across the territories," the alpha wrote. "All of them struggling with the same fears, the same shame, the same lack of guidance. You've proven that proper training prevents tragedy. Will you share that knowledge more widely?" I brought the letter to Cashin that evening. We were in our quarters, Arya asleep in the next room, the fortress quiet around us. "What do you think?" I asked. He read the letter carefully. "I think you've created something revolutionary, and now others want to replicate it." He looked at me. "But it would mean traveling more, being away from home regularly, taking on more responsibility." "I know." I stared at the letter. Part of me wants to keep it small. Just the Crimson Vale children, manageable and contained. But you see the need," he finished. "And you can't ignore it. There are seer children out there right now hearing they're cursed," I said quietly. "Being exiled or hidden or made to feel wrong for existing. And I could help them. Could give them what I never had." I paused. "Is that selfish? Wanting to fix for others what no one fixed for me?" "That's not selfish," Cashin said firmly. "That's meaningful. That's taking your pain and transforming it into something valuable." He took my hands. "But Sarah, if you do this, if you expand to teaching seers across multiple territories, it's going to be huge. Life-changing. For you, for us, for Arya." "I know." I looked toward our daughter's room. Arya's 8 now. Old enough to understand if I have to travel. And she's showing seer gifts strong enough that maybe she should be part of this. Learning to teach others while developing her own abilities. "You want to bring her?" Cashin asked, surprised. "Not everywhere. Not to dangerous territories or unstable packs. But some places, yes. She should see that seers exist beyond just her and me. Should understand the breadth of what we are." I met his eyes. "And maybe it's time for her to learn that being powerful comes with responsibility. That gifts are meant to be shared, not hoarded." Cashin was quiet for a long moment. "You're going to say yes." "I'm going to say yes," I confirmed. "But I need you to tell me if this is too much. If it's going to damage our family, our relationship, our life with the guard. Because I won't sacrifice us for this, no matter how important it is." "Then we make it work," he said simply. Structure it so you're not constantly gone. Bring warriors with you for protection. Use your Seer sight to identify which situations are safe and which aren't. And make it clear to these packs that you're not an asset they can claim. You're a teacher they're privileged to access. I smiled. When did you get so good at this? I've had 20 years of watching you turn impossible situations into opportunities, he said. I learned from the best. Within a year, I was teaching Seer children in 7 different packs across 4 territories. It was exhausting, exhilarating, meaningful work. Each pack had different customs, different attitudes towards Seers, different challenges. But the children were always the same, scared, confused, desperate for someone to tell them they weren't broken. You're changing how entire packs view Seers, Mira observed after one particularly successful training session. 3 years ago, these packs would have hidden their Seer children or worse. Now they're requesting your help, paying for training, treating Seer gifts as valuable. It's not me changing things, I said. It's the children. When packs see what properly trained Seers can do, how they can serve, protect, lead, it's hard to maintain the old fears. Don't diminish your role, Mira corrected. You're the proof of concept. The evidence that Seers with training become assets instead of threats. That matters. But the work wasn't without complications. Not every pack welcomed a powerful Seer into their territory. Some saw me as a threat to their alpha's authority. Others resented the implication that they'd been handling their Seer children wrong. And a few were only interested in exploiting Seer abilities for tactical advantage. Blackridge Pack wants training, Cashin said one evening, reviewing requests. But their reputation is terrible, I finished. They're known for forced matings, abuse of lower-ranked wolves, and general brutality. I took the letter from him. Let me guess, they want military training for their Seer pups. Weapons, not wisdom. The Alpha specifically requested combat applications of Seer abilities, Cashin confirmed. Which suggests they want child soldiers, I said flatly. Hard pass. Send back a rejection citing philosophical differences. That's going to offend them. Good. Let them be offended. I set the letter aside. I'm not training Seers to be weapons. That's exactly what created the Oracle Queen. That's the path I'm fighting against. It was a line I held firm on. Certain packs, certain situations, certain applications of Seer abilities were simply off-limits. Better to refuse entirely than compromise my principles. But that meant making enemies. The assassination attempt came when Arya was 9 years old. We were returning from a training session in Meridian territory. Me, Arya, Mira, and 4 guard warriors. Standard security for pack travel. The attack happened in neutral territory, 3 miles from Nightshade Guard borders. 12 assassins, well-trained, specifically targeting me. My Seer sight caught the ambush seconds before it materialized. Down! I shouted, pulling Arya behind cover as crossbow bolts filled the air where we'd been standing. The guard responded instantly. Warriors engaging attackers, Mira coordinating defense. Everyone moving with practice, but these weren't random rogues. They were professional killers. They're after you specifically, Mira shouted over the clash of weapons. Trying to separate you from the group. I know. I'd seen it in the futures. This attack was designed to kill me and no one else. A surgical strike against the woman teaching Seers across territories. An assassin broke through our line, heading directly for me. I met him with blade and Seer sight, reading his moves before he made them, countering with precision that years of training had honed to perfection. He went down, but 2 more replaced him. And then Arya screamed. Not fear, power. Her Seer gift erupted in a wave of precognitive energy that stunned everyone in a 50-foot radius. Every wolf, friend and foe alike, suddenly saw their own death if they continued fighting. Saw futures where their next strike led to fatal retaliation. The assassins broke and ran, unable to fight through visions of their own mortality. When the wave subsided, Arya collapsed. I caught her before she hit the ground, my heart hammering. I'm okay, she gasped. I'm okay, just that took everything. You saved us, Mira said, staring at my daughter with new respect. That blast of future sight. I've never seen anything like it. Neither have I admitted. Arya's power had manifested in a way mine never had. Not showing single futures, but broadcasting probability to multiple minds simultaneously. That was scary, Arya whispered. I saw all the ways everyone could die. Saw it all at once. And I just pushed it out. Made them see it too. I held her close, feeling her shake with exhaustion and fear. You did exactly right. You protected yourself and the guard. That's what Seer gifts are for, protecting people we love. But I was shaken. Arya at 9 was already more powerful than I'd been at 11. If her abilities continued developing at this rate, by the time she reached adulthood, she'd be the strongest seer in generations. That made her valuable. And in our world, valuable often meant targeted. We need to talk about Arya's security, Cashin said that night, after Arya had finally fallen into exhausted sleep. I know. I'd been thinking the same thing. Today's attack was about me, but they'll come for her eventually. She's too powerful, too visible. Then we increase protection. Assign permanent guards, limit her travel, ensure she's never vulnerable. We can't cage her, I interrupted. I won't turn her life into constant fear and restriction. That's not living. It's surviving, Cashin argued. Which is what matters when people are trying to kill you. I survived, I shot back. Alone in the Whispering Marsh, with no training and no guidance. And it nearly destroyed me. I won't do that to Arya. Won't make her feel like her power is a curse that requires hiding. Then what do you suggest? He asked, frustration bleeding through. Because doing nothing isn't an option. I thought about it, sorting through futures with my seer sight. Looked at paths where we hit Arya, paths where we trained her harder, paths where we changed nothing and hoped for the best. One path shone clearer than the others. We teach her to protect herself, I said. Not just with weapons or warriors, but with her gifts. Today she instinctively used her seer abilities defensively. We need to make that deliberate, controlled, something she can access without exhausting herself. She's 9 years old. I was 11 when I killed the Oracle Queen, I reminded him. Arya's already stronger than I was then. We either teach her to harness that strength, or we let it control her. There's no middle ground with seer abilities this powerful. Cashin scrubbed his hands over his face. I hate that you're right. So do I admitted. I wanted Arya to have a normal childhood. Wanted her to grow up safe and happy and free from the weight I carried. But that's not possible. Not with her gifts, not with my reputation, not with the world we live in. Then we give her the best we can, Cashin said. We train her, we protect her, and we make damn sure she knows she's loved beyond her abilities. Agreed. I moved into his arms, needing the comfort of his presence. And we find whoever hired those assassins. Make an example that sends a message. Attacking my family has consequences. Through our mate bond, I felt his agreement. And his fury. Someone had tried to kill me in front of my daughter. Had put Arya in danger to get to me. That was a mistake they'd only make once. The investigation took 3 weeks. Myra's contacts, my seer sight, and the confessions of captured assassins all pointed to the same source, Blackridge Pack. The same pack I'd refused to train. The same alpha who'd wanted to exploit seer abilities for military purposes. He hired assassins because you rejected his request, Mira said, laying out the evidence. Apparently, he took it as an insult to his authority. Then he's an idiot, I said coldly. And he's about to learn why insulting me is a bad idea. Cashin looked at me sharply. What are you planning? I'm planning to visit Blackridge Pack, I said, with the full Nightshade Guard. And I'm planning to make their alpha understand that I'm not a resource to be claimed or eliminated. I'm a power unto myself. That's a declaration of war, Mira pointed out. No, I corrected. It's a demonstration of consequences. War would be destroying them completely. I'm being merciful. The raid on Blackridge Pack happened at dawn. Not a war, not a massacre, a show of force. The Nightshade Guard surrounded their territory, disabled their defenses, and I walked into their Alpha's hall with Cashin at my side and 30 warriors at my back. Alpha Garrett of Blackridge Pack met us with bluster that barely concealed his fear. What is the meaning of? You hired assassins to kill me, I interrupted, my voice carrying the edge of command that my seer gifts provided. You put my daughter at risk. You thought you could eliminate me because I refused to weaponize seer children for your benefit. I don't know what you're. Don't lie to a seer, I said, and power rippled through my words. I can see truth, can sense deception, and I know exactly what you did. He wilted under the weight of my authority. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to pay restitution to the families of the warriors you injured in your attack. You're going to publicly announce that you hired assassins against me and that you were wrong. And you're going to submit to oversight from the Nightshade Guard for the next 5 years to ensure you never make this mistake again. And if I refuse? He asked, trying to salvage some pride. Then I let it be known across all territories that Blackridge Pack tried to assassinate a teacher of Seer children. I said simply. Every pack with Seer pups will consider you a threat. Every alpha who values my work will consider you an enemy. And the Nightshade Guard will consider you a target. I let him see the futures. Paths where he refused and lost everything. Paths where he complied and salvaged something. His choice was clear. I accept your terms, he said finally, the words bitter. Good. I turned to leave, then paused. And Alpha Garrett, if you ever threaten my family again, there won't be terms. There won't be negotiation. There will only be me, and the consequences of your choices. Am I clear? Crystal, he said quietly. As we left Blackridge territory, Mira said quietly. That was brutal. That was necessary, I corrected. I'm not just protecting myself. I'm protecting every Seer I train, every child who comes to me for help. If I let attacks go unpunished, I'm telling the world we're still acceptable targets. You're establishing yourself as something between pack and power, Cashin observed. Not quite Alpha, not quite Luna, but something else entirely. I'm establishing that Seers aren't victims anymore, I said. We're not going to hide or apologize or accept being hunted. We're going to stand up, and we're going to fight back. It was a declaration, a line in the sand. The world could adapt to powerful Seers, or it could learn to fear us. Either way, the age of treating us as cursed or disposable was over. Chapter 16, The Seer Council. 3 years after the Blackridge incident, I received an unexpected visitor. She arrived at the fortress unannounced. A young woman, maybe 19, with eyes that shifted color with the light and an aura of power that made even seasoned warriors step back. My name is Nova, she said when Cashin brought her to me. I'm a Seer from the Eastern Isles, and I've traveled 3 months to find you. I studied her carefully, my own Seer sight reading the truth in her words. She was powerful, possibly as powerful as I was, and she was desperate. Why? I asked simply. Because you're the only adult Seer I've heard of who's survived to train others, who's built something instead of being destroyed by power. She met my eyes. And because there are more of us than anyone knows. Seers in hiding, Seers pretending to be normal wolves, Seers scattered across territories with no connection to each other. We need, she stopped, seemed to struggle for words. We need what you've built. Community, purpose, proof that we can be more than our gifts or our fears. Sit, I said, gesturing to a chair. Tell me everything. Over the next hour, Nova painted a picture I hadn't fully grasped. In my focus on training children, I'd missed the adult Seers. Wolves who'd survived their gifts without guidance, who'd hidden their abilities to avoid persecution, who'd lived in isolation because they thought they were alone. There are at least 20 of us that I know of, Nova said. Probably more who are still hiding. We hear rumors about each other, but never meet, never connect. We're too afraid that gathering would draw attention, make us targets, or make you powerful, I said quietly. 20 Seers working together. That's unprecedented in modern history. That's what terrifies people, Nova agreed. And why we stay hidden. But you've shown it's possible to be visible and survive. To use Seer gifts openly without being hunted to extinction. I want to know how. I thought about her words, about the implications. I'd been so focused on preventing the next generation from suffering that I'd ignored the current generation. Adult Seers who'd already survived the worst. What do you want from me? I asked. Permission, Nova said. To gather the others. To create some kind of network, I suppose. A way for Seers to communicate, support each other, share knowledge. With you as, she hesitated. Not as a leader, exactly, but as a symbol. Proof that it can be done. You want me to help you build a Seer council, I said, seeing the shape of what she was proposing. Is that insane? Nova asked. The last time Seers gathered formally, the Oracle Queen rose from their ranks and murdered half of them. It's not insane, I said slowly, but it's dangerous. Gathering powerful Seers draws attention, makes enemies, invites the exact kind of persecution you're trying to avoid. We're already being persecuted, Nova countered. Just individually, in isolation, with no support. At least if we gather, we can protect each other, build something that outlasts any single one of us. She was right, and my seer sight showed me futures. Paths where isolated seers continued to suffer alone, and paths where a seer council created fundamental changes in how all packs treated seers. The second set of futures glowed brighter, more probable, more impactful, and more dangerous. "Let me talk to Cashin," I said finally, "and to the guard. This isn't just about me. It affects everyone connected to me. I need to make sure they're prepared for what comes next." "You're going to do it," Cashin said that night. "Not a question." "I think I have to," I admitted. "Nova's right, there are adult seers suffering in isolation. If I can give them what I've given the children, community, purpose, validation, how can I refuse? Because it's going to paint a target on your back larger than anything before," Cashin said bluntly. "A network of seers? Packs are going to see that as a threat to their authority. They're going to think you're building an army." "Then we make it clear we're not," I said. "We establish the council as educational, supportive, focused on helping seers integrate into pack society instead of existing outside it." "Do you believe that?" Cashin asked. "Or are you building something that could challenge pack authority?" The question stopped me. Because he was right. A council of 20 or more powerful seers absolutely could challenge pack authority, could demand changes in how seers were treated, could become a political force that packs couldn't ignore. Was that what I wanted? Or was I just trying to help people like Nova who'd survived against impossible odds? "I don't know," I admitted. "But I know that seers deserve better than hiding in fear. And if that means building something that makes packs uncomfortable." I met his eyes. "Then maybe that's what needs to happen." Cashin was quiet for a long moment. "Then we do it carefully. We establish clear goals, clear boundaries, clear limitations. We make sure this council can't be twisted into what the Oracle Queen created. And we prepare for backlash because it's coming. You support this?" I asked, surprised. "I support you," he corrected. "Even when you're proposing things that terrify me. Even when I can see all the ways this could go wrong." He pulled me close. "But I also see all the ways it could go right. How it could change everything for seers. How it could make your work lasting instead of dependent on your individual effort." "I love you," I said against his chest. "I know, and I love you, which is why I'm going to help you build this thing, even though my tactical brain is screaming about all the dangers." The first gathering of the Seer Council happened 6 months later in neutral territory. 17 seers answered Nova's call, ranging in age from 18 to 53, representing 9 different territories. Some I knew from my teaching work. Others were complete strangers who'd lived in hiding for decades. "This is strange," an older seer named Marcus said as we settled around a massive table Nova had arranged. "I've spent 40 years believing I was one of the last. And now," he gestured around the table, "now I discover there are dozens of us." "More than dozens," Nova corrected. "These are just the ones I could reach safely. There are probably twice this many who are still too afraid to reveal themselves." I stood at the head of the table, acutely aware that everyone was looking to me for leadership despite Nova's claim that I wasn't the leader. "I'm not here to command anyone," I said clearly. "I'm not building an army or a rival power structure. I'm here because I believe seers deserve what other wolves take for granted: community, support, a place to belong. And because I've learned that isolation is the enemy. It's what lets fear grow, what allows persecution to continue. Easy to say when you're powerful and connected to the Nightshade Guard," a younger seer said, her voice sharp. "Some of us don't have that protection. Some of us are one wrong word away from exile or death." "You're right," I acknowledged. "I've had advantages many of you haven't, which is exactly why I need to use those advantages to help others. That's how privilege should work. Not as a shield to hide behind, but as a weapon to break down barriers for those who come after." That seemed to satisfy her, or at least make her less hostile. Over the next several hours, we discussed what a seer council could be. Not a government, not a pack, but a network. A way to share knowledge, provide support, and advocate for seer rights across territories. "We need to be careful about how we present this," Marcus warned. "If packs think we're challenging their authority, then we make it clear we're not," I interrupted. "We're offering resources. Seers who can help train pack members, who can provide counsel on difficult decisions, who can use their gifts to benefit entire communities. We're integrating, not separating." "And if packs refuse?" someone asked. "If they see us as threats regardless of how we present ourselves, then we have each other's backs," Nova said firmly. "That's what this council is for. So no seer faces persecution alone. So when one of us is threatened, 17 others stand up and say no, this isn't acceptable. It was revolutionary. Seers had never organized before. Never had the numbers or the courage or the leadership to try. The Oracle Queen had proven what happened when seers sought power without wisdom. We were trying to prove the opposite, that seers seeking wisdom and community could change the world. By the end of the gathering, we'd established basic principles. The Seer Council existed to support seers, not to rival pack authority. Membership was voluntary and could be kept confidential for those who needed protection. The council would advocate for fair treatment of seers, but would not force itself on unwilling packs. Any seer using council resources to harm others would be expelled immediately. The council would meet twice yearly to share knowledge and coordinate support. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't comprehensive. But it was a start. As the seers dispersed back to their territories, Nova stayed behind. "Thank you," she said simply, "for making this possible, for showing us it could be done." "I didn't do anything," I protested. "You're the one who found everyone, who organized this." "But you're the proof," Nova interrupted. "The evidence that we can survive, can thrive, can be powerful without being corrupted. That matters more than you know." After she left, I stood in the empty meeting space, feeling the weight of what we'd just created. A seer council. A network of powerful wolves who'd been isolated their entire lives, now connected. It was either going to change everything or destroy everything. My seer sight showed me both possibilities in equal measure. The backlash started within weeks. Several alphas sent formal complaints to the Nightshade Guard, demanding to know why we were harboring a seer conspiracy. 3 packs banned seers from their territories entirely, fearing council infiltration. And rumors started spreading that the council was secretly planning to overthrow pack hierarchies. "This is exactly what I warned about," Cashin said, reviewing the complaints. "They see organized seers as a threat, because they've spent centuries treating seers as cursed or disposable," I countered. "They're afraid we'll demand better treatment, that we'll refuse to accept persecution." "And will you?" he asked. "Refuse to accept persecution?" "Absolutely," I said without hesitation. "The days of seers hiding and apologizing are over. If that makes packs uncomfortable, they need to examine why they're uncomfortable with equals." "You're not their equals," Cashin pointed out. "Individually, most seers are more powerful than average wolves. A council of you? You're something else entirely. Then they should be grateful we're choosing integration over domination," I said. "Because we could dominate if we wanted. Could use seer abilities to control, manipulate, destroy. But we're not. We're offering partnership, cooperation, mutual benefit. That's not a threat, it's an opportunity. Try telling that to the alphas who see any challenge to their authority as existential," Cashin said dryly. But despite the backlash, requests for seer assistance actually increased. Packs that had been skeptical discovered that having access to Seer Council, whether for tracking, for mediation, for tactical planning, was incredibly valuable. "They want the benefits without acknowledging the cost," Nova observed during one of our regular communications. "Want seers to serve them, but not to have rights or community. Then we make them choose," I said. "Access to Seer Council resources requires treating seers with respect. It's not complicated. Over the next year, we formalized that principle. Any pack wanting council assistance had to sign an agreement guaranteeing fair treatment of seers within their territory. No more exiling seer children. No more forced hiding. No more treating seers as cursed. Some packs refused on principle. Others signed reluctantly. But many, more than I'd expected, signed eagerly, recognizing that this was how the world was changing. "You're rewriting pack society," Mira observed after yet another pack signed our agreement. "Creating a new structure where seers have guaranteed rights." "I'm just making explicit what should have always been true," I said. "That being different doesn't mean being less valuable. That power with wisdom benefits everyone. You're also making yourself the most influential non-alpha in the territories," Mira pointed out. "That's going to create jealousy, rivalry, challenges you haven't faced before." She was right, but I'd survived worse than jealous alphas. I'd survived the Oracle Queen. I'd survived exile. I'd survived losing my gifts and having them return stronger. I could survive political complications. What I couldn't survive was going back to a world where seer children grew up in fear, where adult seers hid their gifts, where being powerful meant being persecuted. The Seer Council was my answer to that world. My declaration that we wouldn't accept it anymore. And if that made me the most influential non-alpha in the territories, so be it. I'd use that influence to build something better. Something lasting. Something my mother would have been proud of. Chapter 17, Arya's Choice. When Arya turned 16, she announced she wanted to leave the Nightshade Guard. Not forever. Not in anger. But to travel, to learn from other seers in the council, to discover who she was beyond being Seraphina's daughter. I need to find my own path, she said, sitting across from Cassian and me in our quarters. Not the path you've laid out for me. Not following in your footsteps. My own path. Every instinct I had screamed to refuse. To keep her close, keep her safe, keep her within reach where nothing could hurt her. But I looked at my daughter, 16 years old, powerful, confident, more capable than I'd been at that age. And I saw myself at 7, desperate to prove I wasn't just what others expected, needing to survive on my own terms. Where would you go? I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the fear. Nova offered to take me to the Eastern Isles, Arya said. To meet seers there, to learn different approaches to using gifts to... She paused. To figure out who I am when I'm not your daughter or the guard's protege or the example everyone points to. Absolutely not, Cassian said immediately. The Eastern Isles are 3 months' travel. Dangerous territories, unpredictable packs, no Nightshade Guard protection. Which is exactly why I need to go, Arya interrupted. Mom survived the Whispering Marsh alone at 7. I'm 16, and you're telling me I can't handle a supervised trip with one of the most powerful seers alive. That's not fair, Cassian started. It's completely fair, Arya countered. You've both taught me to be strong, independent, capable. But you're treating me like I'm fragile. Like my power makes me a target who needs constant protection instead of a person who can protect herself. She was right, and the worst part was I'd done exactly this to her. Raised her to be powerful, then been terrified by the power she'd developed. You're 16, I said quietly. 16, and already one of the strongest seers alive. That makes you valuable in ways that invite danger. So I should hide, Arya challenged. Pretend I'm less than I am? Limit myself because others might be jealous or afraid. You should be careful, I corrected. I will be careful, Arya promised. But I won't be caged. Not even by parents who love me. Her voice softened. Mom, you've spent my entire life teaching seer children that their gifts are treasures, not curses. That they should develop their abilities fully, without shame or fear. Can you really tell me now that I should limit mine because you're afraid? The words hit like a blade. Because she was absolutely right. I'd been a hypocrite, encouraging other seers to embrace their power while terrified of my own daughter doing the same. How long? I asked, accepting the inevitable. 6 months, Arya said. Maybe a year. However long it takes to feel like I've learned what I need to learn. And you'll check in regularly, Cassian said, his voice tight. Weekly communications. If anything goes wrong. I'll call for help immediately, Arya promised. I'm not trying to prove I don't need you. I'm trying to prove I can stand on my own when necessary. I looked at Cassian. Through our mate bond, I felt his terror, his desperate need to keep our daughter safe, his knowledge that letting her go was the right thing to do. Okay, I said, though the word felt like tearing out my own heart. 6 months. With Nova. With weekly check-ins. And Arya. I met her eyes. If you're in danger, if anything feels wrong, you come home immediately. Pride isn't worth dying for. I know, she said, and I heard my own pragmatism in her voice. I learned from the best. Watching Arya leave 3 weeks later was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. She stood at the fortress gate with Nova, her pack prepared, her goodbyes said, ready to step into the world beyond what I'd built for her. I'll be fine, Mom, she said, hugging me fiercely. I'm your daughter. Survival is in my blood. That's what terrifies me, I admitted. I survived by becoming hard. I don't want that for you. Then trust that you raised me to be strong without being hard, Arya said. To be powerful without being cruel. To be everything you are and everything you're not. She pulled back, kissed Cassian's cheek, and walked through the gate without looking back. I watched until she disappeared from sight, my heart in my throat, my seer sight showing me hundreds of futures. Some where she thrived, some where she struggled, a few where she didn't come back at all. She'll be okay, Cassian said, his arm around my shoulders. She's brilliant, powerful, and she has your stubbornness. She'll be fine. How do you know? Because she's ours, he said simply. And we don't raise quitters. The first month of Aria's absence was excruciating. I threw myself into work, training Seer children, coordinating council activities, handling guard duties. Anything to distract from the hollow place her absence created. Aria's weekly communications helped. She sent detailed letters describing the Eastern Isles, the seers she was meeting, the techniques she was learning. She sounded happy, engaged, alive in a way I hadn't realized she'd been suffocating at home. She needed this, Mira observed after I'd read one of Aria's letters aloud during a council meeting. Needed to discover herself outside your shadow. No matter how much you love her, she couldn't grow fully while constantly being compared to you. I never compared her. I started. You didn't have to, Mira interrupted gently. Everyone else did. Seraphina's daughter. The next great seer. Following in her mother's footsteps. She was never just Aria. She was always Aria in relation to you. The words stung because they were true. I'd been so focused on protecting Aria that I hadn't noticed I was also limiting her. Making her life about living up to or living down my legacy instead of building her own. When she comes back, I said quietly, things will be different. I'll make sure she has space to be herself. If she comes back, Mira said. What? Sarah, your daughter is 16, powerful, and discovering a world beyond the Nightshade Guard. She might decide her path leads elsewhere. You need to be prepared for that. I wasn't prepared. Couldn't be prepared. The idea of Aria not returning, of building a life that didn't include coming home, was unthinkable. But over the following months, as Aria's letters described opportunities, friendships, purposes beyond what existed at the fortress, I had to face the possibility that Mira was right. Aria might not come back. Not because she didn't love us, but because she'd found something more aligned with who she was becoming. For months into her journey, Aria sent a different kind of letter. Mom, I've found something. Or someone. A seer named Kieran. He's 17, studying under a master seer in the Southern Territories. And the letter paused like she'd struggled to find words. He's like me. Powerful but not consumed by it. Passionate about using seer gifts to help others. And he sees me as Aria, not as your daughter or anyone's expectation. I read the letter 3 times, feeling emotions I couldn't name. She's found someone, I told Cashin that night. A boy. He looked up sharply. She's 16. And we met when I was 11 and you were 26, I reminded him. Yes, we didn't act on it for years, but the connection was there. You can't exactly judge. That was different, he protested weakly. It was exactly the same, I corrected. Aria's found someone who sees her for who she is. That's rare. That's precious. We should be happy for her. I am happy, Cashin said, though he didn't look happy. I'm also terrified that she's growing up so fast. That soon she won't need us at all. That's the goal, I said gently. We raise them to leave. To build lives that don't require constant parental input. It's just, my voice caught. It's harder than I expected. We held each other, 2 parents confronting the reality that our daughter was becoming her own person. With her own path, her own connections, her own future that might not include coming home. Aria returned 7 months after she'd left. She walked through the fortress gates looking different, older, more confident, more settled in her own skin. And beside her walked a young man with dark hair and eyes that shifted color with the light. Kieran. Mom. Dad. Aria hugged us both, then stepped back. This is Kieran. She paused, smiled. He's important. Hello, Kieran said, his voice steady despite the obvious nervousness. Thank you for allowing me to visit. I studied him with both normal sight and seer sight, reading his truth, his intentions, his character. What I found satisfied me. He was genuine, kind, powerful in his own right, and absolutely devoted to Aria. Welcome, I said, offering my hand. Any friend of Aria's is welcome here. Over dinner that night, Aria told us about her travels, her studies, the things she'd learned from seers across 3 territories. I want to stay gone, she said finally. Not forever, but longer. There's a seer community forming in the Southern Territories. Young seers like me and Kieran who want to build something new. A place where seers can live openly, can develop their gifts without fear, can just be themselves. That sounds like what the council is building, Cashin observed. The council connects adult seers who are already established, Aria corrected. This is different. This is young seers creating community from the ground up. Building a life where being seer is normal, not exceptional. Where we're not constantly proving we're not threats or living up to impossible expectations. I understood what she wasn't saying directly. That being my daughter came with weight she hadn't chosen. That every seer she met compared her to me, expected her to be like me, couldn't see her as separate from my shadow. How long? I asked quietly. A year. Maybe more. Arya met my eyes. I love you both. Love the guard. Love what you've built. But I need to build something of my own. Something that's mine, not an extension of your legacy. It hurt, but I also understood. Had lived it myself in my own way. Then go, I said. Build your community. Create something beautiful. And know that you always have a home here when you need it. Thank you, Arya whispered, tears in her eyes. For understanding. For not trying to keep me. I learned from the best, I said, echoing her earlier words. My mother let me go when she knew I'd be safer elsewhere. I can do the same for you. We talked late into the night, about her plans, about the Southern Territories, about Kieran and the future they were building together. And slowly, my heartbreak transformed into something else. Pride. My daughter wasn't following my path. She was creating her own. And that was exactly what I'd raised her to do. When Arya left again 3 weeks later, it still hurt. But this time, I watched her go with something closer to peace. She's happy, Cashin observed as we stood at the gate. Really happy. Not performing happiness or proving anything. Just happy. She found her purpose, I agreed. Found people who see her as herself instead of as our daughter. That's worth more than safety. You're remarkably calm about this, he said. Given how terrified you were when she first left. I'm terrified, I admitted. Every day. But I'm also proud. And I've learned that loving someone means letting them take risks. Letting them find their own way, even when that way leads away from you. When did you get so wise? He asked, pulling me close. When I stopped trying to control futures and started trusting people to write their own, I said. We stood there watching the road long after Arya had disappeared, holding each other, accepting the inevitable truth that children grow up and parents must let go. It was the hardest lesson I'd ever learned. And the most important. Chapter 18, Full Circle. 10 years after Arya left to build her community, I returned to the Whispering Marsh. Not because I had to, not because I was running, but because Cashin suggested it on my 38th birthday. A pilgrimage to where everything began. You've spent 20 years building things for others, he said. Maybe it's time to visit the place that built you. So we went. Just the two of us, leaving the guard, the council, all our responsibilities behind for a week. The marsh hadn't changed. Still wrapped in perpetual mist, still dangerous, still beautiful in its deadly way. But I had changed. Walking through it now felt different. Like visiting an old friend instead of facing an enemy. This is where I fell from the tree, I said, pointing to a spot I recognized despite decades of growth. Where you caught me. Best day of my life, Cashin said. Though I didn't know it then. You thought I was a nuisance. I thought you were going to be complicated, he corrected. I was right. We found the hollow tree where my mother and I had sheltered. Someone, probably animals, had taken it over, but the carved handholds remained. Evidence that we'd been here. That we'd survived. She would be proud of you, Cashin said quietly. Your mother. Proud of everything you've become. I hope so, I said. I've tried to build what she wanted. A world where seer children don't suffer what we suffered. Where being different is valued instead of feared. You've done more than that, Cashin said. You've changed how entire territories think about seers. Created structures that will outlast you. That's legacy, Sarah. Real, lasting legacy. I thought about the council, now numbering over 40 seers across 10 territories. About the seer children I'd trained. Many now adults doing their own training. About Area's community in the Southern Territories, thriving and growing. Proving that seers could build peaceful lives outside traditional pack structures. About all the futures I'd shaped through choices made over decades. It's strange, I said, being 38 and feeling like my work is mostly done. Your work is never done, Cashin corrected. It's just evolved. You're not building foundations anymore. You're maintaining and expanding what you've built. That's a different kind of work, but just as important. We spent 3 days in the marsh, visiting places from my childhood, telling stories, processing decades of accumulated weight. On the third day, We found the spot where my mother had died. I'd avoided it for 23 years. Couldn't bear the thought of seeing where she'd taken her last breath, where I'd lost the only person who'd believed in me unconditionally. But standing there now, I felt something unexpected. Peace. I did it, Mama, I whispered to the wind. I survived. I became something more than survival. I built the world you wanted me to build. The marsh didn't answer, but I felt it anyway. A sense of completion, of promises fulfilled, of a child's desperate vow to make her mother's sacrifice mean something finally achieved. Ready to go home? Cashin asked, his hand finding mine. Yes, I said. I'm ready. We returned to the fortress to find it in controlled chaos. Emergency council meeting, Mira said the moment we arrived. 3 territories requesting immediate Seer intervention. A child manifested explosive precognitive abilities and hurt several packmates accidentally. And, she paused. Aria's here. My heart jumped. She's okay. She's fine, Mira assured me. Just needs to talk to you. She's in your quarters. I found my daughter, now 26 years old, waiting with Kieran and a small child who looked about 3. Mom, Aria said, standing. This is Lyra, our daughter. I stared. You have a daughter. We have a daughter, Aria corrected, pulling the child close. She's 3. And she's... Aria met my eyes. She's showing Seer gifts already. Strong ones. Stronger than mine were at the... I knelt so I was eye level with Lyra. She had Aria's red eyes and Kieran's dark hair, and when she looked at me, I saw intelligence far beyond her years. Hello, Lyra, I said gently. I'm your grandmother. I know, Lyra said solemnly. I saw you in my dreams. You have silver in your hair and lightning in your hands. Seer sight. Already active. Already showing her possible futures. We need help, Kieran said quietly. She's more powerful than we expected. More powerful than we know how to manage. And the community, he stopped. They're starting to fear her. Starting to whisper that maybe she's too powerful. That maybe she's cursed. I finished, the old words bitter in my mouth. History repeating itself. We won't let them exile her, Aria said fiercely. We won't let her experience what you experienced. But we don't know how to train someone this powerful. Don't know how to help her control gifts that are manifesting years too early. I looked at my granddaughter, 3 years old, and already showing signs of being possibly the most powerful seer in generations. Already facing the same fears, the same whispers, the same danger that had defined my childhood. She'll stay here, I said. With me. I'll train her, guide her, ensure she grows up knowing her gifts are treasures. And you too. I looked at Aria and Kieran. You'll visit regularly. Be her parents. But let me be her teacher. You do that? Aria asked, relief clear in her voice. Take on training another child seer? I've been doing it for 20 years, I pointed out. What's one more? Especially when she's family. Over the following months, Lyra became a permanent resident of the fortress. Not hidden, not caged, but openly powerful and learning to control gifts that would have terrified most adults. Again, I said during a training session, watching Lyra sort through visions. Don't fight the futures. Let them flow past you. Pick the one you want to examine instead of trying to hold them all. There are so many, Lyra said, her voice strained. Hundreds. Thousands. How do I choose? Practice, I said. Start with immediate futures. The next minute, the next hour. Master those before reaching for distant possibilities. She was brilliant, picking up techniques in days that had taken me months. But she was also 3 years old, with a 3-year-old's emotional regulation and understanding. Balancing her precocious intelligence with her chronological age was exhausting. You're good at this, Cashin observed one evening, watching me help Lyra through a particularly difficult vision. Better than you were with Aria. Because I'm not her parent, I said. I can be the teacher without the emotional weight of worrying about her every second. Can set boundaries, push her harder, let her fail in ways I could never let Aria fail. And because you've had 20 more years of practice, he added. That too, I admitted. Lyra was with us for 2 years before Aria and Kieran decided she was ready to return to the Southern Territories. Not because her training was complete, Seer training was never truly complete, but because she needed her parents more than she needed intensive instruction. Thank you, Aria said the day they left, for giving her what you gave me, what you give all the Seer children. Safety, understanding, love. That's what grandmothers are for, I said, hugging her. And Arya, you did the right thing bringing her here. Never doubt that. Asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Watching them leave, 3 generations of seers, all surviving and thriving, I felt something settle that had been restless for decades. This was what I'd been building toward. Not just my own survival, not just Arya's success, but a world where every generation of seers had it easier than the last. Where Lyra would grow up knowing her power was valuable, not cursed. Where she'd never face exile or fear or persecution for being different. That was legacy. Real, meaningful, lasting change. 5 years later, on my 45th birthday, the Seer Council honored me with a ceremony. Over 60 seers gathered, nearly triple the number from our first meeting. They came from 12 territories, representing 3 generations of seers who'd survived and thrived in a world that had once tried to destroy them. Seraphina Thorne, Nova said, now the formal leader of the council I'd helped create. 25 years ago, you were exiled as a child. They called you cursed, threw you away, expected you to die. Instead, you became the first seer in modern history to not just survive, but to build something lasting. You killed the Oracle Queen. You created the Seer Council. You trained hundreds of seer children. You changed how every pack in these territories thinks about seers. She held up a medallion, silver, inscribed with the symbol I'd designed for the council. A tree with roots reaching down and branches reaching up, representing connection between past and future. We honor you not just for what you've accomplished, but for what you've made possible. Because of you, seer children grow up valued instead of feared. Because of you, adult seers have community instead of isolation. Because of you, we're building a future where being seer is celebrated, not condemned. She placed the medallion around my neck, and 60 seers stood and applauded. I looked out at them, at faces young and old, at powers diverse and incredible, at people who existed because I'd proven survival was possible. I didn't do this alone, I said when the applause faded. Every person here contributed. Every seer who refused to hide, who raised their children with pride, who demanded fair treatment. You built this as much as I did. I paused. I just got started first. And I had people who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I looked at Cashin, standing at the back of the hall with Mira and the guard. My mate for 25 years, my partner in everything, my constant through every transformation. We build this together, I continued. All of us, not as individuals, but as a community. And that's how it continues. Each generation making it a little easier for the next, until being seer is just one more gift among many. Not special, not cursed, just part of the beautiful diversity of our world. The ceremony continued with presentations, with stories from seers I'd trained, with plans for the council's future. But I found myself thinking about the past. About a 7-year-old girl falling from a tree in the Whispering Marsh, certain she was about to die. About an 11-year-old making the choice to burn out her gifts rather than let the Oracle Queen win. About a 17-year-old finally admitting she loved someone she'd loved for 7 years. About a 20-year-old becoming a mother and discovering that adding roles didn't mean losing identity. About a 38-year-old returning to the marsh and finding peace with ghosts. All of those versions of me, scared, determined, evolving, had led to this moment. To standing in a hall full of seers who existed because I'd refused to give up, to die, to accept that being different meant being less. You're crying, Cashin said later, finding me alone on the fortress walls. Happy tears, I assured him. Just processing, realizing that the girl who fell from that tree actually became everything her mother hoped she'd be. You became more, he corrected. Your mother hoped you'd survive. You changed the world. We changed the world, I corrected. You, me, Arya, the council, every seer who refused to accept persecution. We all contributed. True, he agreed. But you started it. You were the proof of concept. The evidence that seers could survive, could lead, could build instead of destroy. That matters, Sarah. That will always matter. I leaned against him, feeling the mate bond hum between us, feeling 45 years of life weighing on me in the best possible way. What now? I asked. I've built the council, trained hundreds of children, created structures that will outlast me. What's left? Living, Cashin said simply. Just living. Enjoying the world you've built instead of constantly fighting to build more. Watching Lyra grow up valued and safe. Seeing Arya thrive in the community she created. Growing old with me. That's what's left, Sarah. That's what you've earned. Growing old with you. I repeated, testing the idea. That sounds perfect. Good, he said. Because I have plans for our old age. Travel plans, specifically. Places I want to show you. Things I want to do that don't involve training seers or fighting rogues or changing society. Just us, I said. Just us, he confirmed. I thought about that future. Decades ahead, watching grandchildren grow, seeing the work I'd started carried forward by others, existing as just Sarah instead of Sarah the seer or Sarah the teacher or Sarah who changed everything. My seer sight showed me glimpses of those futures. Good futures. Peaceful futures. Futures where I finally got to rest. Okay, I said. Let's grow old together. Let's see where life takes us without constant crises. I smiled. Let's just be happy. That, Cashin said, kissing me, is the best plan you've ever made. Epilogue, 30 years later. I am Seraphina Thorne. I am 75 years old, and I am dying. Not dramatically. Not heroically. Just the slow, natural fading that comes with a long life fully lived. Cashin sits beside my bed, his silver hair now more white than silver, his amber eyes still sharp despite his 83 years. We've grown old together, exactly as we planned. Aria's on her way, he says quietly. With Kieran and Lyra. They'll be here by nightfall. Good. I manage, my voice weak but steady. I want to see them. Want to see. I stop, gather strength. Want to see what we built. And we built so much. The Seer Council now spans 15 territories with over 200 members. Seer children grow up celebrated, not condemned. 3 packs have Seer alphas. Unthinkable when I was young. The Nightshade Guard continues under new leadership, still serving, still protecting. Aria's community in the Southern Territories houses 50 seers living openly, peacefully, joyfully. Lyra, now 33, leads the council's training program, teaching the next generation with the same fierce dedication I taught her. And there are more. So many more. Seers I trained who trained others. Children who became adults who built careers, families, lives where being seer was just one facet of who they were. I changed the world. Not alone, but I started it. Proved it was possible. No regrets. Cashin asks, reading my thoughts as he has for 50 years. None, I say honestly. I survived when I should have died. Loved when I thought I couldn't. Built something that outlasted me. That's more than enough. Arya arrives as the sun sets, bringing Lyra and a young child I don't recognize. Mom, Arya says, kneeling beside the bed. This is Soren, Lyra's son, your great-grandson. I look at the boy, maybe 5 years old, with green eyes like mine and white hair like my mother's. He stares at me with the aware gaze of a developing seer. Hello, Soren, I say. Hello, great-grandmother, he says solemnly. Lyra says you're the one who made it safe for seers. The one who changed everything. I helped, I correct. But lots of people change things. I pause. I just refused to accept the world as it was. Decided to make it better. Will you teach me? He asks. Before you. He stops, childish tact preventing him from finishing. Before I die? I say gently. I can teach you a little. Enough to start. The rest, Lyra will teach you. And what she can't teach, you'll figure out yourself. That's how it works. Each generation learns from the last, and then discovers their own path. Over the following hours, family gathers. Guard members, council seers, people I've trained and taught and loved over decades. They come to say goodbye, to thank me, to tell me how my life changed theirs. This is overwhelming. I tell Cashin after the 50th person has shared their story. This is legacy, he corrects. Real, tangible proof that your life mattered. That you touched hundreds of lives and made them better. As night deepens, most visitors leave. Only family remains: Cashin, Arya, Kieran, Lyra, Soren. 4 generations of seers in one room. Tell me, I say to Arya. Tell me what the world looks like now for seers. Is it better? It's unrecognizable, Arya says. Mom, children growing up now can't imagine a world where being seer meant being cursed. They learn about the bad times in history lessons, but they don't live them. Her voice breaks. That's what you gave us. Freedom from fear. Good, I whisper. That's what I wanted. What your grandmother wanted. What every seer who came before me wanted but couldn't achieve. Freedom to just exist. My seer sight, which has been flickering for weeks, makes one final effort. I see futures, decades ahead, centuries ahead. I see Soren grown and training his own students. I see the council expanding until every territory has representation. I see a world where Seer is just another descriptor, no more significant than eye color or height. I see the future I fought for finally, fully. It's beautiful, I breathe. The future. It's so beautiful. What do you see? Cashin asks, his hand tight in mine. Peace, I say simply. For Seers. For everyone. The world we dreamed about. It's coming. It's already here. I close my eyes, feeling my body finally releasing after 75 years of fighting, surviving, building. Thank you, I say to Cashin. For everything. For catching me when I fell. For loving me when I was difficult. For building this life with me. Thank you, he says, and I hear tears in his voice. For being worth catching. For making every difficult day an adventure. For showing me what love really means. I love you, I whisper. I love you, he says. Always. Forever. Every version of you. I feel my family around me. The daughter I raised, the granddaughter I trained, the great-grandson who represents futures I'll never see. I feel the weight of 75 years lifting. The struggles, the victories, the impossible journey from cursed child to celebrated elder. And I feel, for the first time in decades, my mother's presence. Not physically, not literally, but a sense of her pride, her love, her satisfaction that I kept the promise I made over her grave. I did it, Mama, I whisper. I survived, and I made sure no one else has to suffer what we suffered. The last thing I see before darkness takes me is Cashin's face. Still beautiful despite age, still mine despite everything, still the constant that made impossible things possible. And I go peacefully, knowing I lived well, loved completely, and changed the world for the better. My name is Seraphina Thorne. I am the seer who refused to stay broken. And this is the story of how a cursed child became the woman who saved her people. The end.